Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 Board of Education regular board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 4:33. We don't have any public comment for closed session items, so we'll retire to closed session and return at 6 o'clock. Thank you. Everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 Board of Education regular board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:04. We have board member Banning that is remote, so I would like to announce that for the record that this meeting is being conducted pursuant to California Code Section 54953B concerning teleconferencing of meetings. Board member Banning is participating in this meeting via Zoom from 1041 Deanna Place, Escondido, California, 93025. In accordance with the Brown Act, this location has been identified on the agenda for this meeting. I would like to ask board member Banning to respond to the following questions. Mr. Banning, are you able to hear our proceeding on your end?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Board member Banning?
Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Thank you. Do you have a copy of this agenda for the meeting?
I do.
Has the agenda been posted at your location?
It has.
Is your location such that any member of the public could participate in the public portions of this teleconference meeting from your location?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because we're having this meeting with teleconferencing, all actions will be a roll call vote. And now we have language access. Welcome.
Thank you. We have Spanish interpretation available on Zoom and here in the boardroom, and also we have ASL interpretation on Zoom. Buenas tardes, tenemos interpretación al español disponible. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Dr. Maldonado, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand and face the flag. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the announcement of closed session action. In closed session, the board took action to approve the May 14, 2025 final settlement agreement and general release between parents and the Santa Barbara Unified School District for case number 2024-25 SECOCA, pursuant to which the district has agreed to fund, reimburse, or provide educational services to the student, and the student's parents have agreed to release claims against the district in exchange for educational services as specified in the agreement. The vote was unanimous. Thank you. No school board member report, but we have the Dr. Maldonado's report.
Good evening and welcome everyone once again. I do want to begin this meeting, board members, by taking a moment to reassure families that our schools are safe spaces. In light of recent reports of increased immigration and customs enforcement activity across Southern California, these actions may raise concern, especially as we gather in the next, in the next 2 days for graduations and end-of-year celebrations across our district. As outlined in our board-approved resolution, Santa Barbara Unified stands firmly in support of every student and family. We remain committed to protecting the rights, dignity, and safety of all members of our community. What is happening is troubling. The safety of our schools should not be in question because of federal actions. I encourage all of you to know your rights and support your neighbors as families in our community go through these very real and difficult fears. If you're a parent with concerns or questions, please contact your school's administrator or family engagement liaison through the school office. We have sent out resources to our families last week and have sent out again the Know Your Rights cards and are continuously going to make those available. We remain fully committed to keeping our schools safe and welcoming, especially during this important time of graduations and celebrations. Our leaders have been preparing for a joyful time so that our students are celebrated for all their achievements. As Board President Escobedo has said, Eric, our student board member, is not able to be here tonight, but I just want to say a few words. Eric has been one of the best advisors I've had at the district year in and out. As our student board member, he gave us a great sense of what is really happening in our schools and how we can take better care of our students. And we're going to really miss Eric. But with that said, the board also selected our next student board member, and I'd like to welcome the new 25-26 board member, Carlos Taft Vasquez from San Marcos High School, to please join us at the podium and introduce yourself so that we can all begin to get to know you. Welcome.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Carlos Vasquez, and I will be a senior at San Marcos High School next year. I really love my time at San Marcos, and I've tried to make the most out of it, joining a lot of clubs, Metro Club, Investment Club, playing a lot of sports like baseball, golf, and cross country, and surviving various AP classes. I'm in the Apple Academy, and I've served as the class president for the last 3 years. And then outside of school, I'm a member of the Santa Barbara Youth Council, to really work to ensure that the youth perspective is represented. Personally, I'm really interested in local government. I have an Instagram account where I post interviews with local government officials, and I'll also be interning for Councilmember Gutierrez this summer. Another interest of mine is leadership. I'm really making a positive change in our community, and I practice that with different board positions and leadership roles that I have. And lastly, music. I really like to play the guitar and piano, and I volunteer at a music studio in downtown Santa Barbara. I've become increasingly interested in topics related to equity, and so that many of my committees, clubs, and out-of-school activities have a focus on that kind of aspect of diversity and equity. I strongly believe in the aspect of intervening with students early on in their education to try to set them on a path for success. I hope to bring that perspective and those values to the board as student board representative. I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to becoming more involved with the board and our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Carlos. I know you're getting ready to end the school year as well. Next board member, go ahead, do you want to bring him up here with us? Where do you want us to stand? Next, board members, we're delighted to welcome some incredibly talented students from La Colina Junior High's award-winning 7th and 8th grade mixed show choir Outburst, led by choir and theater director Lisa Suarez. I also want to acknowledge Principal Jennifer Foster, who's here with them tonight. And tonight, as they're making their way up, these dedicated performers will present a moving excerpt from When Your Feet Don't Touch the Ground from Finding Neverland. Welcome.
When did life become so complicated? Years of too much thought and time I wasted, and in each line upon my face is proof I fought and lived another day. When did life become this place of madness, drifting on an empty sea of waves of sadness? I make believe I'm in control and dream it wasn't all my fault. When your feet don't touch the ground and your world's turned upside down, here it's safe in this place, above the clouds. When your feet don't touch the earth, you can't feel the things that hurt. and you're free. There's no need to come down.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Ms. Suarez. Thank you so much. Just remember when you hear about their Emmys or Tonys, they started here at Santa Barbara Unified. Thank you, Ms. Foster. Next, board members, I do want to highlight the Superintendent's Resiliency Award. And if you notice, our board room has been decorated today with pictures of some of our upcoming graduates for 2025. The Superintendent's Resiliency Award recognizes and celebrates students who have overcome credit attainment gaps and challenges during their high school career to successfully graduate. This award is a testament to strength, perseverance, and growth, qualities that shine through each of our honored students. In the 24-25 academic year, 163 students across the district were honored this award. Santa Barbara High School had 66 students, San Marcos 41, Dos Pueblos 11, and La Cuesta Alta Vista 45. Here's a video that shows what makes these students so special.
My name is Alberto Sanchez.
Angela Wampu,
Jasmine Avila,
Caitlin Ramirez, Ashley Maya,
Irali Emanuel Jimenez,
Marin Rojas.
I didn't think I would make it this far. At some point, I gave up.
So when I first came to Santa Barbara High, I was like actually really excited. And we still had masks at the time too because of COVID and everything. So it was like getting back to school and brand new.
I just saw my report cards and I just knew that wasn't the person I was. I knew I was capable of doing bigger stuff.
Los desafíos que yo enfrenté aquí fueron el idioma principalmente, ya que se me hacía muy difícil entender mis clases.
I was here at San Marcos my freshman year, but for personal reasons I had to move back to Mexico.
Emprender un nuevo idioma y emprender cómo es vivir aquí en Estados Unidos.
I had to retake multiple classes and I kept getting in trouble, which pushed me down pretty far.
Although I'm separated from my parents right now, they're back in Mexico, I feel like that just pushed me knowing that they have really big expectations of me, and like even I myself have really big expectations of myself, so I just feel like that contributed a lot to.
Lo que me ayudó a seguir adelante con mis estudios fue mi familia, que siempre estuvo ahí para mí, apoyándome, diciendo que sí podía.
I never thought I'd get here. It's been such a long journey, and it's just like an obstacle after an obstacle, and I'm just really glad I'm here.
When I came to La Cuesta, like everything was so more hands-on and it was smaller classrooms, and I really enjoyed that.
Este gran paso se lo quiero dedicar a mi mamá Margarita Rentería y a mi tío Javier Rentería.
It makes me feel very proud of myself. I didn't give up and just, I don't know how to explain it. My parents are very proud. They're going to show it at graduation.
Both of my parents from neither sides, they've never made it past high school, so it's a bittersweet moment. I'm really excited. Sorry.
We have so many incredible graduates at Santa Barbara Unified, and this is just one of the many awards that our students receive. And I wanted to make sure that we tell all the different stories, and I see one of our students here, because it's really about the journey and about the lessons that we're learning along the way, and we don't want students to ever feel like we give up on them or for them to even think that they can give up on themselves. We all have different paths to get to our destination, and every one of those paths should be honored and celebrated, and we're all just so proud of our students. So I wanted to make sure that we recognize them. We want to invite the students. They are here. You can see their pictures in the back, but they're here. And I want to invite them to come up to in front of the board dais here so that we can take a picture with you as well. So please, Miss Julissa, you'll help me grab the students. Please come to the front of the dais so we can take a picture and recognize you as well. And thank you. I'm almost done, I promise. Next, I want to celebrate the first class graduating from Santa Barbara High School in the very, very newish, 4-year-old, well, 4 years because it took 4 years to get to the graduation stage, the translation and interpretation pathway at Santa Barbara High School, which is the first of its kind in the state of California. This CT program is for students who want to explore and develop the skills needed to be a high-quality translator or interpreter. New this year, the program also offered the Community Interpreter International Certification, which is comprised of 40 hours of professional training led by our very own, and I don't see her here, Sofia Rubalcaba. Oh, there she is in the back, who's here tonight. And I want to do a special shout out for Sofia because she does such a great job in our board meetings, as you know, IEP meetings, all sorts of translation. These students are graduating with industry recognized credentials. This reinforces the link between classroom learning and workforce readiness. I want to call the students, Ms. Mendoza, Ms. Rubalcaba, up to take a photo with the board. While they walk up, the students are Andres Corrales Ramos, Fatima Costa Jasso, Natalie Nava, Elizabeth Murillo Medina, Rubiel Ángel Fernández, Bianca Martínez, Jaden Valencia, Maria Ángela González, perdón. So please come on up so we can also recognize and take a picture with you. And I've said this to the board, my first job in education was also a translator. So just to name a few of the things that they're doing with real-world experience, they're interpreting daily announcements at Santa Barbara High. They're collaborating with the Santa Barbara Museum of Art on translation projects, volunteering at the Unity Shop, supporting Know Your Rights events for families, exploring internships with the Santa Barbara Courthouse. And I want to say that there was a Santa Barbara Courthouse interpreter that's also been working with the school and the teacher and everybody. We want to proudly recognize this pathway. It uplifts student identity and cultural heritage, bridges language gaps in our community, and prepares the next generation of interpreters and advocates. So thank you so much. Felicidades. To end, I want to recognize the last classroom champions for the year, starting with Ashley Cornelius from Santa Barbara High School. Sorry, I have to go to my slides now. Forgive me, everybody. I just want to be able to, I can't see it from where I'm sitting. Here we go. With 2 decades of surveys in Santa Barbara Unified, Ashley Cornelius exemplifies what it means to be a transformative educator. At Santa Barbara High School, she brings science to life by bridging rigorous academic content with real-world relevance, integrated art into chemistry for VADA students, aligning biology with human anatomy in the sports medicine pathway, and grounding ecological lessons in the context of Santa Barbara's natural environment. As you can see, she brings science alive and links and aligns all of the learning for our students. Thank you, Ms. Ashley Cornelius. From Adams Elementary, we have Audra Mitchum. Teaching is a profession that helps to shape the character and future of an individual. It awakens their curiosity, nurtures their potential, and lights the way for students. At Adams, she says she's been lucky to find a school community that ignites her passion for teaching, encourages lifelong learning, and she hopes that each day she's doing the same for her students. Thank you, Ms. Mitchum. Next is Brittany Miner from Roosevelt Elementary. She has her friends in the back. Mrs. Miner is an invaluable asset to the Roosevelt community. Her dedication to her students is evident in their growth and success year after year. She has established herself as a true team player, consistently collaborating with her colleagues to provide rigorous and relevant instruction to all students. Thank you, Ms. Miner. From Santa Barbara Community Academy, Catherine Warner. Catherine teaches her TK students with love and joy, creating a classroom full of laughter and active learning. She holds high expectations and her students rise to the challenge. Many now know all of their letters and sounds, with several reading above grade level. These skills were developed under Catherine's care and instruction. Her passion and dedication make her truly a champion teacher. Kristen Ontjes from Monroe Elementary. Her dedication to improving literacy outcomes truly sets her apart. She consistently goes above and beyond to ensure every student grows as a confident, capable reader. Her passion and commitment make a lasting difference in their lives. Thank you, Ms. Ontjes. From Goleta Valley Junior High, Mr. Ron Peñate. As a longtime Goleta Valley Mariner science teacher, Mr. Peñate has inspired generations of students with his engaging lessons, unwavering support, and ability to make complex topics come alive. Beyond the classroom, he connects with students as a coach on the sports field and as the leader of the chess club. Mr. Peñate creates spaces where students can grow, compete, and thrive. From Franklin Elementary, we don't have just one, but two, Perla Muñoz and Juan Pablo Santana. They have fit Franklin's style like a glove. They have built strong relationships with families and students and have brought a new motivation to our staff. They have been trained and follow the curriculum, but are also open to learning from veterans how to infuse the curriculum with new ideas and real-life context. They are a positive light on our campus and have made the loss of retired teachers lessen as they are open to the ideas, structures, and systems that have made seasoned teachers successful. We are proud to have them on staff and very excited to see their careers develop. And I want to end with recognizing our retirees. Last week we had an opportunity to bring our retirees last Thursday here in our boardroom. We're incredibly grateful for their dedication and service to our district, including some and many who are here for more than 3 decades. Their contributions have made a significant impact, and we wish them all the best in their next chapter. I do want to recognize and ask you to please join me in celebrating these employees if you see them, including our very own Ms. Kim Hernandez here in the boardroom. Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Maldonado. Ms. Munoz, do we have public comment for items that are not on today's agenda?
Yes, we do. I'll go ahead and call the first 3 that I have here. Rich Lashwa, Maddie Bordovsky, and Regina Sabins.
Okay, we're back and the mics are working. I've asked Mr. Lashwa to give his public comment again. I'm going to ask anyone who's giving public comment to please directly point the mic towards your mouth and try and speak closely so that the level of volume for the Zoom listeners is adequate. Welcome back, Mr. Lashwa.
There we go. How about now? Good? Yes, yes. Okay. For over 2 years, I have called attention to the peculiar plight of arts teachers, but I've never given examples of the contrast of highly qualified arts teachers struggling to keep their programs compared to their colleagues in other disciplines. At Santa Barbara Junior High, Karen Dutton, a national board certified music teacher who's retiring this year, ran an award-winning program from 2009 to 2018 and spent most of her career being told enrollment was an issue, despite our 700 to 800 kids for most of those years. Post-COVID, Brett Larson, Performing Arts Teacher of the Year, took over, but it was reduced to part-time due to enrollment. The other half of his job served as the District Arts Coordinator, continually advising admin and the board of looming disaster for our arts programs. He's now at Roosevelt, and Kevin Christensen was given a series of elective wheels, with only a 0-period jazz band as the full-year class. Students who had developed passion and skills in elementary school had no outlet, and he was tasked with trying to create a performing group out of kids who were in his hands for as little as 9 weeks. He effectively deployed decades of secondary music expertise, assisting with the choir's Broadway trip in innovating music lessons for his classes, and he was given a RIF notice in March. Understandably, he saw the only assistance from the district was advice to increase enrollment, so with a family to take care of and bills to pay, he began applying elsewhere. The RIF was rescinded after his second round of job interviews. No new promise of assistance came from district admin, save Prop 28 money, which can't be spent because it's already a full-time position. So if he stays, he's committing to a system designed for him to fail. If he leaves, Santa Barbara Junior High now scrambles to find a music teacher. At this time of year, that often means inexperienced new graduates or educators on the clearance rack. We might be in this exact position a year from now when the next teacher burns out. Sadly, many arts teachers across the district struggle to prevent their jobs from sinking to this level again. The quality of teachers isn't the problem, and hasn't been for a very long time. It's easy to say all teachers suffer under declining enrollment, but if a good math teacher is riffed, there's another left to run the department. If the only music teacher leaves, and the next one starts over, it takes time to get momentum. Even excellent teachers need more than 6 months. We have enough students in the district to enroll in vibrant arts programs. We don't have enough classes for the students to fill those programs. Then we punish the teachers and students because they couldn't build enrollment fast enough. Yes, tight budgets and enrollment means tough decisions, but Californian gave millions of dollars to our district's arts programs. We mustn't panic from the investment cost. The long-term dividends are clear, an estimated 15% return to economies investing in public school arts programs. Create space for the arts. Enrollment, rising test scores, and student engagement will follow. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Board. I'm here tonight to speak about the ongoing impact of the RIF process. While I appreciate the efforts that were made to save many positions, the effects of these reductions still reverberate through our schools. It is critical we acknowledge these consequences so that moving forward, we can prioritize stability and avoid treating the RIF process as business as usual. I work at an elementary school that went without a music program last year. We were told throughout the year that the district was trying to hire someone, but no one was placed and our students lost an entire year of music education. This year, we were fortunate. We hired an incredible first-year music teacher, talented, motivated, and ready to make a difference. She immediately put instruments into the hands of our upper grade students, taught them how to read music, and built a thriving program. Our winter and spring concerts were highlights of the year, showcasing just how much the students had learned. Most importantly, our students loved music class. You can probably guess where this is going. As a first-year teacher, she received a RIF notice. With no guarantee of a position for next year, she began looking elsewhere. And another district was lucky enough to hire her. Even when the RIF was rescinded, the uncertainty had already driven her away. For a young educator trying to afford living in Santa Barbara, stability matters. Because our district couldn't offer that, we lost an exceptional educator. And I know my school is not alone. This story is being repeated across the district. We need to do better. Our students deserve better. Thank you.
Okay. And Regina Sabins.
Hi, my name is Regina. I'm back to talk about how I made it through my first year, split schools, and how hard it was. Next year I was offered another position in the school district, again with 2 schools, but one of the schools was not the same. So the investment that I made building a program for one of the schools, I'm not going back to. And that makes me really sad, my students really sad. We want to create these programs that are sustainable and that work for our students and build the culture, arts culture, and we're not doing that. And now, on top of that, if you want to know what my schedule will look like next year, 6 classes a day for 3 days and 7 classes a day for those other 2 days with 5 minutes in between transition times. That's what it's looking like for me. Am I excited about that? No. Am I torn about it because I want these students to have art? Absolutely. But there's got to be a better way for this. And I'm here to share that one of my students were like, "Why are you leaving us?" And I didn't have an answer for them. And I don't know who's coming in to take my place at that other school. And I shouldn't have to be sad about that. I should be able to give them an answer. And as a district, we should be able to support this because we have Prop 28. Everyone's saying Prop 28. We've got these things. But, this is where I'm at. This is where my heart is at. And I'm doing twice the amount of work with no answers from district. I wrote them May 16th, again May 29th, and again June 5th, and haven't heard back. So I don't know what the details look like for that, and I know that there are more people now this year that are needing to be split schools, and I'm sure they want to know those answers too. So please help. Thanks.
Yeah.
I will have Dr. Becchio follow up with you. He's here if you want to talk to him.
Okay, the next public comment is by Rita Newhouse Chegleli. I'm sorry, okay, and then followed by Ashley Cornelius.
Is it on? Wait. Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. And board, I just want to say thank you for passing the resolution.
Sorry, Miss Newhouse. Is the light on?
It is.
Okay,
now
now
it is.
yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Board, I would like to say thank you for passing the resolution for the pride flags. I was at Santa Barbara High School, and the community there and the taking the photo and having Mr. Razzo give a little speech beforehand, it made me feel great. And I think that was the message for everyone. More inclusivity is always the way to go. So thank you for that. I'm here to comment tonight on an excellent educator named Tia Hanna. I ask that the Santa Barbara Unified School District prioritize student needs and allow Tia Hanna to return to her teaching position at Santa Barbara High School. Tia is a phenomenal English teacher and a big ball of sunshine. She works specifically with VADA and AVID, which serves students who are not only motivated to succeed, but also some of the most vulnerable in our district. Our students thrive because of the consistency, mentorship, and long-term investment that programs like VADA and AVID provide, Tia being a conduit. When Tia was involuntarily transferred, it disrupted that continuity. And now, with the position open at SBHS, the logical and compassionate choice is to bring her back to SBHS. Tia's students rely on her. She knows their stories, their challenges, their aspirations. She has spent time earning their trust and helping them navigate both school and life. Filling this position with someone new ignores the deep relationships that have already been built and risks harming the very students these programs are meant to support. She also works very well with students with IEPs. The SPED department loves her. She's great. We believe this decision can be reversed quickly and fairly. It's not just about staffing. It's about doing what is right for students, teachers, and the integrity of the SBH's Santa Barbara High School's specialized programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, board and Dr. Maldonado. My name is Ashley Cornelius. I'm the bargaining chair for SBTA and the proud representative of the awesome science teaching happening in our district and at Santa Barbara High School as one of the classroom champions for June. As we continue to reflect on this past year and look to the future, I want to update you on our on the work our bargaining team has been doing this last year. We spent the last year gathering information from our members from 2 surveys, one of which you guys saw the report from recently. And we also hosted a bargaining open house where we got some good in-person feedback. So we have a solid idea of what improvements to the contract our members would like to bring to the table for negotiations next year. In late August, we will be inviting you to join us in the process of solving some of these problems. Some affect just small groups of teachers and students, and some that affect all of our teachers. At that time, I will be submitting our Sunshine Letter to you and Dr. Becchio. In that letter, we will declare which articles in the contract we will have proposals for, and once your team is ready, we can start the negotiations for the 2026-27 school year. Our hope would be to start meeting in October, which would allow us to meet every 3 to 4 weeks and establish the cost of many of our proposals by January, and then be able to prioritize our proposals before you need to start discussing staffing issues for the 26-27 school year. This plan allows us time to get feedback from our members, allows our team to reduce the impact on their classrooms, and gives your bargaining team time to get feedback from you between sessions. All this can be done in parallel with the proposed finance committee so that when final decisions about staffing and budget need to be made in February and March, there's plenty of information for you to make choices that will keep our district moving towards our goal in a financially responsible way. There's another way. This is another way for us to provide transparency and work collaboratively so that you, the board, can have as much information as possible before adopting the next year's budget. I look forward to working together to make this district an amazing learning environment and safe place for our teachers and students. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
That concludes public comment for items that are not on today's agenda. I'd like to turn it back to the board for board comments and correspondence. Ms. Caffrey.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to today briefly talk about the work of the tech committee in recent weeks. I'm new to the committee. Mr. Cooper led it, and I know many educators, parents, district leaders have all been advocating for stronger cell phone policies for years. So this is all, I'm very new. I just joined for the last 3 meetings. And I just want to say I thought it was particularly productive. It was very helpful to have a cross-section of people from across our district and community on the committee. And I also want to say special thanks to Kim Tilton, who has been working on this issue for 4.5 years. We also had many principals, Goleta Parents for Tech Reform, COO Steve Vance, Assistant Superintendent Edison. Basically, we had many people collaborating together, and Mr. Cooper facilitated it very well. So there is a consensus that in next year our junior highs are going to be off and away all day, cell phones off and away all day. And we also talked a lot about a need to talk about why this is happening, and really the educational piece, the why behind this effort, and that we need students to buy in. And the hope is that in the following year, we can go bell to bell all day in our high schools. And so I just very briefly want to talk about why the tech committee feels this is so important. So basically, excessive screen time has increasingly been linked to student mental health challenges. And so we have a responsibility to act. And we collectively can support student mental health by helping to set good policies that shape students' environments. Because while basically mental health conditions affect many, many people, very common, and we can also basically shape our environments in ways that can prevent and treat and in some cases cure mental health conditions. So anyway, I will just end on that note, that I'm just very excited about the progress of the tech committee and excited that our junior highs are taking this step. And I know it will take a lot of effort, and I just want to acknowledge the many, many people who have worked on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Other board reports and correspondence? Ms. Munoz.
Yes, thank you, President Escobedo. I wanted to speak about this past weekend in terms of what I attended, and the first one that I wanted to mention was the memorial service in memory of Pedro Menchaca. In conjunction with, I accompanied Dr. Hilda Maldonado to this, and it was a true gathering of alumni, of community leaders, and of family of Mr. Menchaca, and was a beautiful service in his memory and his service to Santa Barbara High School and the wider Santa Barbara community. I also attended the first annual literacy fair at Santa Barbara Junior High, and want to give thanks to Denise Alvarado, our assistant superintendent, and all of those that participated in this. It was wonderful to see the families there, and Dr. Beal was there, as well as Dr. Maldonado. And it's just, to see the kids there, the participation of the regional center, and books being given to children and supporting that. And of course, also wonderful food that was provided. The other community event that I attended today was a press conference at the courthouse. As we know, there's the presence of ICE in our community. I did attend the press conference there with many of our elected officials, with organizations such as the 805 and DocuFund. FLA was there, as well as many speakers sharing about their experience and how to handle this as a community in unity and as a nonviolent expression of our rights, our civil rights. I did want to give out the 805 Immigrant Rapid Response Hotline number, where you can call 805-870-8855 and text alert on that, so that you do receive alerts as to when ICE is in the community and where they are. It is English and Spanish, so it is bilingual. And so I wanted to mention that this Saturday, starting at 10:30, there will be a gathering at Chase Palm Park, where we are looking at creating a human chain along Cabrillo Boulevard for that, and recognition and support to our undocumented members of our community and their families, to support them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Banning, did you have a board comment or correspondence?
I do. I just wanted to congratulate our new student board member, Carlos Vasquez. The value of student voice in governance is really important, and I want to say thank you to Dr. Maldonado for the dedicated work with the Student Superintendent Council, in which the student board member will play an important role. These are two excellent pieces of communication in our district that are not all that typical in districts around the state. So good news for us to have such a remarkable young man as Carlos on board. Good news for him to have that experience and to emphasize the importance of student voice. Also like to congratulate and thank the students from La Colina who performed at the beginning of the meeting, and also kudos to the students from the interpretation program. In the last couple of weeks, I attended the Harding University Partnership School 6th grade promotion. I was impressed with the sixth grade students' research projects that were highlighted as part of the programming. We actually stopped the program and went into the auditorium and looked around at their research work. Groups of students explained it very proudly and did some really excellent work. And I just have to say this was a really refreshing opportunity in a promotion graduation ceremony to see this kind of linkage directly to outstanding academic work. Also attended the Capital Advisors Group budget presentation at the Santa Barbara County Office of Education, and just wanted to say thank you to the county for providing that kind of information. It was well attended. I was there with our CBO and got some great insights into what's coming and what's driving the state budget this year and what to expect in future years. So, and finally, just a personal thank you to all of the support staff in the superintendent's office and the tech department who made it possible for me to do this this remote participation tonight. It's an important meeting, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Banning. I too will congratulate Carlos for being our new school board member. Looking forward to working with him, and thank you to Eric for all that he did. He was a really powerful voice this year. Thank you to the students of La Colina for the performance today, and thank you for setting that up, Dr. Maldonado. Congrats to all the students that were recognized tonight, and to all of our graduates and those that are going to promotion ceremonies this week. It's always a fun time of the year. Meetings that I had, Dr. Maldonado and I had a really interesting meeting about financing for, we're looking at options for financing for that Glen Annie housing project if we were going to move forward with it as a board. It will be coming to the board at some point in the near future, but we want to have a few more answers to the questions that we still have that are out there. But it was a very impressive presentation. And this is a group that works with school districts all across California. And it's, of my time working in housing, it is the most innovative approach to financing that I've seen. And we're going to have to be pretty innovative because we want to provide housing for all of our staff that they can apply for. And a lot of times the funding mechanisms are quite restrictive. And so we're trying to find a way around that. And I think with this partner, we'll be able to. So you can expect to see that at the board. Another meeting that I had, it was at Dos Pueblos. I met with the Black Student Union, and I want to thank Healing Justice for setting that up, and then also Principal Woodard for allowing me to come on campus and meet with the BSU during their lunch period, in which we had a really good conversation. They had a list of requests, and we had some discussion, and I'll bring that list to the board and share it with Dr. Maldonado when I get access to it. But one of the most substantive points of conversation that we had revolved around the uniform complaint process and talking about what happens when there is a complaint. There was a feeling, and we've heard this, so this kind of blends really well. We also had a Cobway meeting. We're hearing the same type of feedback from parents, and that's something that we have been trying to address in how we follow up with families and the type of information that we can share, and also being explicit and upfront with the information that we can't share. And an interesting request was that we go to school sites and actually present to the students about this process and include them in what the process is, what information can we share, what's the timeline, what happens, like can we circle back with them and let them know about what the outcome is? Maybe the answer is no, but I found that actually quite helpful, and it's something that you go to these meetings and you have these really substantive conversations with these students, and I just walked away feeling just so hopeful that these are the leaders that are having conversations that I think we sometimes struggle to have, and they are presenting like real actionable solutions, things that we can actually do. So I look forward to bringing that back to the Cobway group, but also with Dr. Maldonado and the cabinet talking about how we can maybe educate folks and educate students, and also make these a more regular touching base point. And so I'll be meeting with Santa Barbara High's BSU at some point, either during the summer or in the fall. The last is I also met with Santa Barbara Reading Coalition. They attended our priority setting session, board study session, and so this was a follow-up that Dr. Beal and I attended and had a really good conversation with them, mostly about what's next and what that process is. And we told them about tonight's meeting and the validation process and what they could probably expect from our priority setting. And so that is my board report. Next, we are going to go to E1, Santa Barbara Unified School District 2025-26 fiscal year proposed budget. And we have Ms. Hernandez. Second to last meeting. Welcome.
Oh, no, we weren't. Okay, good evening. Okay, so this is the adopted budget public hearing. For the adopted budget, unlike the other budgets that we have throughout the year, we actually have two meetings. We have the public hearing, and then we come back and do the adopted budget and ask you to approve it in the next board meeting, June 24th. So, and this kind of gives the public a chance to kind of see the numbers and see where we're going. It is a very fluid situation. Not for us, but just because there's so many things going on right now. Generally, when you do the adopted budget, you're basing it on May revise, which is the governor's budget. The governor's budget starts in January, and then there's a revision done in May, and that's why it's called May revise. And that's generally what we have to kind of go on. But then from May until the end of June, there's actually two more budgets. There's that happen in the Assembly and then in the Senate at the state level. So each of those budgets are then kind of the leaders of the three different, the governor and then the leaders of the Senate and of the Assembly negotiate. They work together and try to figure out what the actual state budget's going to be. In some years, they're very, very close. In other years, there may be some politics that are at play, and there are some items that are the priority of one side and maybe not another side. We're seeing that with this budget. So the other thing that we include in our May revise, in our budget, other than just May revise, is we include our estimates for the current year that we're in. So in 24-25, we don't complete the year and we don't bring the unaudited actuals until September. But at this point, we're estimating. This is where we think we're going to end up based on where we are now. Also included in the budget is the salary increases that were already negotiated and any sort of reductions in the multi-years that we've already talked about going forward, and our special reserve that we're going to be using. So all those things that we've kind of been bringing forward, we're including them in this budget. So this is where we are. We kind of always show this to give you a sense of what's happening in the budget cycle. So we're sitting in June, the very first meeting in June, and we're doing the adopted budget and the LCAP hearing for the first meeting, and then both of them will come back again for June 24th for you all to approve. So today, the lawmakers from the Assembly and the Senate have come together and they have agreed on one proposal of the budget that they're bringing forward. So we just got the news of that today. So the lawmakers generally agree that the COLA should be funded, which is what the governor was suggesting. But there is a $1.3 billion underfunding of Prop 98. So what that means is there's a Proposition 98 that says the funding in the state, especially if revenue increases or changes, a certain percentage of that has to go to education. And so what we're seeing is our state budget is having some difficulties. We're at a deficit in the state budget. And the Prop 98 side of it, which is the education side of it, they're saying they can't fully fund, which is against the law because that's what the voters approved and that's the Prop 98. So the problem is there's pressure on the other side of the budget, which is not the education side, and now there's this tug and pull of what's going to happen and what's going to be funded. But so both of the three budgets, the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor's budget, all said that they were not going to fund the Prop 98 to the full level, and it's falling short by this $1.3 billion. So if that happens, we're basically hearing that the CSBA and other organizations will immediately file lawsuits for the state. So we're in a position where we're going to have to sue to try to get some education funding back from the state. So it's very awkward, to say the least. Another thing that's going on is that the governor's priorities, very, very strong priorities, are for TK and for ELOP monies. And the other joint proposal are saying not to fund as much in those areas. The governor's budget didn't include some funding for ethnic studies, even though it's mandated program. And so, of course, the other two sides are saying they want to fund ethnic studies. So you have this negotiation going on. And a lot of it is kind of uncertain for us because we don't know. For us, most of our funding is through property taxes, but we do get some of that other funding too. So that's just kind of where we are. I just wanted to give you a sense of like, as of today, this is the kind of wildness that's happening. Okay, so federal education budget. I am going to be showing you some slides that came from School Services of California in a presentation that we saw. This is President Donald Trump's proposed 2026 budget. We are very, very happy that Title I and special education funding are going to be maintained. The only question about it is there looks like there might be some restructuring of that funding. So we don't know what that means at this point. The part that's very problematic for us is that President Trump wants to eliminate Title III completely. So we don't get a ton of money through Title III. It's about $300,000 every year. But that funding is for instructional aids, extra teachers' hours, platforms, and curriculum associated with the migrant education. So if that doesn't come in, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to fund those things. This is a very busy slide. I'm just going to give you kind of the high points on it. So this is the California economy and things that are affecting our state budget. California's unemployment is going up. Our GDP is expected to continue trending down. Our inflation is looking to be about 3% in 2026. Revenue is projected to slow down in 25-26. What is interesting is our domestic migration has moderated, meaning we had a period where we're seeing quite a bit of out migration, they call it, but that's kind of slowed down, and they're expecting an increase slightly in 25-26 and in future years, which hopefully will help us with enrollment. Housing is remaining flat for a lot of different reasons, and that doesn't help us at all here in Santa Barbara, just because we receive a lot of our property tax money, and that comes a lot through the housing side of the budget. Major state budget issues and considerations. So even though Prop 98 is $1.3 billion underfunded in these different proposals, we are still much better off than the non-education side of the budget. So there's going to be pressure from that side for everything else in the budget on our resources and trying to fulfill some of the funding education obligations. Kind of the big one is that the top right-hand side of the slide is that we don't really know what's going to happen with federal policy changes, and our advisors are a little worried about that because we don't know if some of these federal policy changes will need to be backfilled by the California state budget. So it just is a lot of uncertainty. The other thing that's an issue is if you remember when we had flooding, I don't I think it was 2 years ago, and we all had chance to file our taxes later. That's what's happening in the Los Angeles County area due to the wildfires, and that is one of our biggest counties in the state. So the delayed revenue collections for those tax receipts are going to complicate budget projections for the state. Okay. So we have some risks to the economy in our state budget. The stock market has been volatile, as you probably all know, and most of it is in response to federal policy changes. All the other things I've already mentioned, unemployment, GDP. California has several lawsuits pending against the federal government, and so the outcome of those can affect California's economy. And the big three revenues are projected to be lower going forward. The gloomy fiscal outlook is really for the 26-27 budget year. Next year is not as bad as going forward in 26-27. So that's where our advisors are saying to kind of look out. And so we've got unemployment increasing, housing not great, tariffs still affecting the supply chain, some ports are still empty. All of this just adds up to uncertainty and problems, potential problems with state budget. Okay. We have some things that we are not including in our budget, even though they were in May revise, and I'll explain why. We have our advisors, school services, and capital advisors both warned us not to include some things in our budget because it's just too volatile at this time, and they prove right today. I'll explain. The discretionary block grant, in January, the governor was saying that there would be $1.8 billion for a discretionary block grant that would go to us, and then it was reduced to $1.7 billion for May revise. And the joint legislative proposal want to cut that by 70% and call it $500 million. So if we had budgeted that, we just can't. We can't budget things that we don't really know all the information on. And in some of these, we don't know if it's going to be unrestricted. We don't know if it's going to be restricted, if there's going to be strings attached that they say aren't attached and then they come in later and they are. So we didn't budget for it. Other things that are not budgeted in May revise at this point, there's an additional learning recovery block grant. We have had a learning recovery block grant. It was like our last remaining COVID funding budget that was to help us kind of get back on our feet again after COVID. And we had that block grant. We received money for it. We started spending money on it, and then the state clawed some of that money back. So now they're saying they want to give us some of it back, and at this point we're not budgeting for it because we were advised not to do so. We are spending the remaining amount of that money this year. There's also a TK add-on, which doesn't affect us since we don't receive funding for TK. But again, the joint legislative proposal wanted to reduce that or not have it at all. Then there was another one for ELOP. The governor wants to actually give us more money for ELOP. The joint legislative proposal says maybe, but we're going to wait on that. Maybe it'll be in January or not this year. So there's a lot of negotiations on that one. So there's other things, teacher prep and professional development was also in May revise, but it was reduced and repurposed since the January budget. We're going to wait on that as well. So why do I tell you all of this? Because if you see it in May revise and you're not seeing it here, this is why. We were instructed by our advisors, just don't. It's too volatile, too risky. And so what would happen if we were to put it in our budget and we don't receive that funding, or if it comes in a lot less, then that's a much worse situation for our district, and we don't want to put our district in that kind of situation. But this kind of reminds me as to why when people say, why does adopted budget start at one place and then we end up somewhere else in the next interims or at the end of the year? And this is why. In the beginning, there's a lot of unknowns and uncertainties. And we can revise the adopted budget at the 45-day window after we actually have a final state budget, and that's probably recommended for my next person in this position. Okay, so some good news. We have some increased FTEs that we are projecting in the budget. In classified, we added into the budget 42 positions for special ed paras. And it is always our goal to fill those positions and have, the people in the special ed classrooms that need to be there. But those are very hard positions to fill. So we're putting them in there. If we can't fill them, then we end up using contracted temporary agency services, and then we take money from the salary side of it and we take it from the contracted side of it. So you'll see in 24-25 that kind of swing. So 167 FTE, and then we add the 42 paras in and we reduce the contracted labor. And that's what I'm just trying to show there. For certificated, we actually are growing increasing FTEs in the secondary space and in the special ed space. For FTEs in special ed, some teachers due to an increase in enrollment there. And in secondary, also an increase in enrollment. There's 4 FTEs that we're increasing there. And we're bringing back a DLI biliteracy support specialist, a TOSA, to support the DLI programs in the ML master plan. So certificated, then we're growing by 9. Okay. So that was pretty much it on the explanation of the hearing and opening the hearing.
Thank you. Do we have public comment for this item?
No, we
You
don't.
have some sheets over there. We will make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. We promise.
Yes, we do. We have Kat Ross. Apologies. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi. I've been looking at the budget, and because budgets are a statement of priorities, I just wanted to bring our attention to the percentage of salaries going to classroom teachers versus other salaries. So, like 10 years ago, 58% of salaries were going to classroom teachers. And then it was 57.5 the next year, and it was 56.6 the next year, and then it stayed 56 for 5 years. And then in 2021, it was 55. And then in 21-22, we went down to 52, and now we're at 51, and we're 51 again, and it's just going down, right? Like, so the percentage of salaries, even though we said we added so many great teachers during COVID, and then we had to get rid of them or whatever, it's just not bearing out in the percentage of salaries being spent on classroom teachers versus other salaries. We're just spending, we're shifting money, right? We're prioritizing other positions. And that's just been true over the last 10 years. We keep shifting our priorities away from classroom teachers in favor of other positions. And so I'm just bringing that to our attention, right? That we're again approving another budget for another year in a row where that percentage is going down. So that's what I wanted to bring our attention to. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the last one.
Okay. I'll turn it back to the board for any questions. Dr. Beal.
Okay, so thank you for that presentation. I understand that that this document is a compliance document, but it does have reductions. And so my question is, between now and the meeting that we have in 2 weeks, are we going to get detail on how, not what the reductions are, we can see those numbers, but why reductions are being made in certain areas, especially the larger reductions. I know that there are funds or anything, but I think that sort of clarity is something we've been asking. And so we can certainly try to go back, but I think this is a public document, and I would really like to see more clarity for people who are just looking at our agenda and trying to understand that we are reducing our spending by 16 million between this year and the next year, and what that is, where that is coming from, where the big reductions are. Is it an end of funding? Is it a deliberate cut? Are we making changes in programs? I know that these things are fluid, but this is what we start with, and sometimes that keeps carrying throughout the year. And what I don't want to have is I don't want to not have that discussion well before we make final decisions, whether it be in January or March. So we've talked about starting that discussion as soon as we can, so I support that. We're going to talk about that a little bit differently later in the meeting. So are we going to get more information? That's really my question between now and June 24th.
Yes, absolutely. So every year, every single budget, we do a whole narrative that shows all the different changes, unrestricted, restricted, and every single element. So it'll say, supplies, what changed, or utilities, what changed. And so you will definitely get that, and they'll be part of the budget packet.
And really what I'm saying is not that I need the percentage. I want to know why there's a big, and I mean, this is the first showing, and so honestly, ideally, I would like to have had that information now so that I have 2 weeks to think about it and to give input or whatever. So we'll find out in 2 weeks. The other question I have is, out of everything on the budget, which was complicated to look at, I noticed that last year and this year, we have about a $1 million deficit in the cafeteria fund. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, so the cafeteria fund is our nutrition program, and we do not receive enough money to pay for that program. So any additional funding that is needed, we have to do a contribution from the general fund. For the last 3 or 4 years, we haven't had to do that just because we had enough money, like beginning balance and following through. But currently now, we are now back to what we were before, where we're having to contribute from the general fund. There are some plans going forward for next year of how we're going to reduce some costs and also to bring that a little bit under control. Doing a little more central kitchens instead of having kitchens at every single site. That saves some money. But we just, in general, don't receive as much money to cover every single meal as is the cost of every meal.
Yeah, so from my point of view, that is a huge expense, right? $1 million. And so I would be interested in hearing when that might happen. I mean, it would be great if it happened right now. I don't know if that's part of our financial planning, but that is really a lot of money, and we're talking about not getting funding from other sources, so it'd be nice to have that not be an ongoing loss. Those are my questions for now. I might think of another, but I'll cede to somebody else.
Ms. Caffrey?
Thank you. So my first question is about elementary specialists and how much time our students are getting, because it's my understanding that as a board, we voted to maintain our elementary specialist program. And so I'm wondering, are our students going to be getting the amount of minutes, the same amount of minutes?
Ms. Caffrey, I'm not finding the nexus between that question and this item.
I can explain, because basically our budget is how we fund things, so it matters. It's directly connected because basically funding teachers, how we fund our teacher. Our budget is saying who we are hiring next year, and that exactly connects to what programs we offer. So I don't see how they're not related.
I mean, with that logic, anything's on the table then that we spend money on. And I think we need to keep it to this particular item. So I'm going to... Did you want to rebuttal?
Not a rebuttal. What I would love to do is just show you what a budget looks like from a different district, a couple of sample budgets, because it shows you how the budget is exactly, that is the point of the budget, is to discuss what we're spending on. And so it's a direct connection. Like, I don't exactly see.
You're asking about instructional minutes, though.
Yes, because the point is, as a board, we voted to maintain a certain number of instructional minutes, which means a certain...
We voted to maintain the specials positions. The actual scheduling and all of that was done by site leadership and district staff.
Okay, because my understanding is that we voted to maintain our elementary specialist program.
It was the specials positions. We removed those from the reduction in force notices when we were making those decisions back in March. And that was the decision that was before the board. We weren't discussing minutes or schedules. That was part of the discussion to color the decision, but it wasn't the decision that was before the board.
I see. So, okay, that's helpful. So to clarify, we voted to maintain the same number of positions, but not the program.
It was the positions. Yeah, we were discussing which positions we were going to issue preliminary reduction in force notices, and we decided to take the specials positions off of that list for the preliminary reduction in force.
Okay, so I think this kind of, okay, then I will come back to my comment and just ask a different question. And that question is, I understand we're going to be getting plans on Prop 28 funding in September, but is Prop 28 funding included in this budget? So basically the spending that we're going to be doing, is that included in the budget?
Yes, it's included in the budget. And I'd like to also add, so Prop 28 is the amount that we receive for that is about $1.9 million, so that's included. But we also spend a lot more money than that just on salaries of music and arts in our that we have been doing all along. So I added up just the salary and benefits of our arts and music staff, and we're spending about $4 million every year. That is on top of that 1.9. So that is in the budget and ongoing.
So basically my question is, for Prop 28, we're required to spend 80% of that funding on staffing. So I understand we're spending $4 million on arts and music teachers. Is that after the additional 1.9 million in
It's
Prop 20?
before. It's before.
So basically, are we using our $1.9 million, 80% of it for staff?
We will, but we receive that money every year, so we're still using some of the money from the earlier years that didn't spend it as much on staff because it took a while to get going. So I don't know if maybe Steve will come up. Mr. Venz might talk a little bit more about that.
Good evening. So with Prop 28, we had mentioned before that last year, 23-24 was the first year that we actually received this funding. We received it like in February, March of that year, so we couldn't really apply it to staffing, obviously. So we have applied a waiver, so we have that money available not for positions but for purchasing things. This school year, for 24-25, we actually did use some of that money to hire staff. So including a folklorical teacher who's teaching at both Santa Barbara High School, Santa Barbara Junior High School, and Franklin. We have a music teacher at La Colina who took on an extra 0.2. So now he's teaching a full load at La Colina. And we did it with a few other positions as well. That's clearly not all of the 80%, but going into next year as we get the money again, we're looking at two parts. One, for whatever wasn't spent, we'll do a waiver, but the goal really is to go ahead and see if we can use the money to meet 80%. But realistically, because the funding goes directly to the schools, not to us, we're looking strategically how we're going to fund it, and we'll probably use 100% of it towards staffing. So the state, when we get audited, they're looking at us increasing the staffing. They also know that it's complicated because some school districts, like for example, Goleta, they didn't have positions, and so they were able to throw all of their money immediately and use 100%. Our school district, as Ms. Hernandez had stated, we've been doing this. So we're figuring out how to strategically fill those gaps. So that's where we stand.
Thank you. So one question we've heard from Mr. Lashua many times that we basically cannot expand some of our art programs because there's not enough time in the day. And I'm curious, when we can address that, because, as we think about expanding our staffing, whether at the same time we should be thinking about the time that staff have to actually teach music and arts. So I'm wondering, yeah.
I think the more appropriate avenue for that discussion, because it's been one that I think the board has expressed interest in the past, because we're talking about something a little bit more complicated, because we've heard the 7-period day, we've heard the intra-district transfer policy, we've heard adding 6th grade to the junior highs and making them middle schools. All of those are potential options that get at the heart of what Mr. Lashua has been talking about. But each of them have different costs. They have different considerations. And so I think maybe we either schedule a special board meeting or a study session of sorts, where we talk about the 3 options, what it would mean, what it would demand of the district and staff, and what are the costs and considerations.
Basically, I just don't want to lose the opportunity when we have money to add staffing to think really thoughtfully about how we're adding staffing, so that and then also I am curious to hear from the Steering Arts Committee. I know that they're meeting soon, just what progress that they have made and what they recommend to us. Yeah.
I think I'll go back to the proposal. If we are going to be intentional, I think that's the way to do it. And we can bring multiple voices into that. Any other questions? Mr. Banning, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Beal?
So I'm just going to make one comment because we're at the comment time right now. What Board Member Caffrey is actually referring to is, and we're talking about this budget, we did talk about where we're reducing our spending, and we also talked about where we added spending. So we're kind of looking at the bigger picture. It's not about cutting. Sometimes we're going to increase in certain areas. The question with the specials is when we clawed back the RIF and we said we're not going to take away the elementary specials teachers, that was a certain amount of FTE. But what seems to become clear to me right now is at the same time we preserved that FTE, we also committed to having all 4 disciplines across all of the elementary schools. So we took those FTEs and now we've stretched them. And so the question I think that's being asked is, can we use our Prop 28 funding to relieve that stretch? Because there is a discussion that there's a stretch to go to all these different schools and to continue to preserve the amount of minutes. There are classroom minutes, there is prep time, and there's sometimes just time that's not accounted for. And as we talk about our goals, which include literacy, math that we're going to validate, we're going to talk about that later, culture and climate, student outcomes, the feeling of the quality of our instruction really speaks to probably all of those goals. So that's really, I think, the question that Board Member Caffrey is asking. Can we use our money to give the same quality we've been giving? Because we did make a change even though we kept those 3.5 or 4 specials.
Doctor?
That was my question. I just clarify why this has become a question. Because I have the same thinking in mind.
Do you have an answer? Is your mic on?
So, to give a little bit of context around the question that I'm hearing, which is, can we hire Prop 20 teachers to add more time for specials teachers in elementary? If you recall, in our prior board memos, we stated that when we looked at instructional minutes across the 9 elementary schools, we found that there wasn't coherence around the amount of time required to spend teaching reading, teaching math, and all the subject areas. We know that we want to focus on literacy and math and protecting the time that a student gets. So from a student perspective, how much time will my teacher be teaching me reading, including adding power hour, math, social studies, science, all the different subjects. What we found is we were looking at the equitable distribution across the 9 schools and adding the 4 specials, which we didn't have before at all schools. We have enough staffing, and we will actually end up, if we hired more teachers into that space, we would have not enough minutes in the day to add additional instruction. As you recall, that was another, in a way, outcome of us looking at this space a little more closely. We're still working through those decisions and those schedules, and on June 16th, we have a meeting with principals, because we know this is not the week to bring people together to do that kind of work. We're trying to get through 1 year and open another year, to solidify everybody's calendars and everybody's instructional minutes and ensure that those things are all happening. If there were to be investments in elementary, as I see it in this moment, and they might give me new information, we could hire people that would be beyond the school day in elementary with Prop 28 money. And I think that's the meeting that is tomorrow with the Arts Committee. It was originally scheduled for May 29th, but it was moved to June 11th. That was in my board memo to you this morning, because they had performances. So people are still working through that, but I, as a superintendent, cannot really try to put in more arts time when I know that we are trying to improve literacy and math, and I want to be able to protect that. But I really need time to sit with the principals to look at that, to look at the staffing that HR has given them, and then definitely look with the Arts Committee's recommendations as to how that can be done in another way.
Can I request that following those meetings, that in a board memo you can report back to the board
And I'll just make a final comment, and this is something, like you said, that can happen now, and it really needs to be worked out. We commended a teacher, Ashley Cornelius, for being a science teacher for VADA, which is an art program. And so one of the things we have to think about is, yes, there are instructional minutes, there are minutes during the day, there's only so much time students can be in school. But I was having a conversation with a community member about how there is a STEAM teacher in the Cold Spring district that improved math scores. And so sometimes we lock ourselves into this idea that only one type of teacher can only teach one type of thing. And I think we need to explore that in our STEAM programs. This would take time. This is not something we're going to do next week. But there can be support, especially for math, with art, and as we're seeing, there can even be support for literacy. We do need to stick with our curriculum. That is definitely, for me, we have to get our curriculum, and we have to do that well. But as we go forward, it would really be nice to integrate some of our other type of teaching and not just be a math class, but STEAM is going to teach this portion of math. And that's how we free up minutes, and we do it creatively, and we do it in a way that engages students. So food for thought.
Ms. Caffrey?
And I think we've also heard just so much research about how your brain develops in many different ways. And so things like music help make connections in a different way. And so that's why, I think as we talk about a whole well-rounded education, we can't cut back on all those things. And so that's why I really would like to know, and maybe this is in the follow-up, but just how much time kids are getting in different subjects.
Thank you. Mr. Baining?
No comments, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Munoz?
I'm trying to decide how to word this. I don't see the connection, honestly, between the proposed budget for 25-26 and the minutes, the curriculum and so forth. I think that would be a agenda item that I would prefer to see set for a future meeting, and so that would give us, staff and the cabinet a time to prepare for that discussion.
Ms. Caffrey.
So now we're at the comment section. So I just wanted to kind of talk about what Trustee Beal mentioned about the narrative part of the budget and understanding what we are spending on, because that really is what the budget is like, what are spending priorities and what are we trying to accomplish as a district? And so I also understand that we can't get there this year. I totally understand that the need to be patient. But I also think it's helpful to kind of have a map of where we're going. And I'm really excited about this financial advisory committee. And then I just wanted to bring up a couple budgets that I think are good examples of where we want to be. So let me just pull it up. And I guess I'd like to have these included in the minutes. And I'm sure there are many more, and this is one thing I would like our finance committee to really be looking at. But Fairfax County and then Tigard to Alaton, I thought were two very interesting budgets. One was a 5-year finance plan that also goes with the budget. And then the other is a budget in narrative form that shows the major investments that the school district is making and how they are basically the why behind the whole budget. Because when I look at the budget here, it's just hard to understand what we're trying to accomplish by looking at the numbers alone. I think you need to have the story and the reasoning and also kind of the long-term plan. So I just wanted to bring that up kind of as we think about the coming year.
Thank you. Any other?
Well, yeah, I do want to
Mr.
chime
Bennett.
in at this point.
Mr. Bennett.
I want to acknowledge that the conversation that we've been having is all on good subjects that we need to be having. But we have a public hearing item in front of us on the 25-26 budget. That's the way it was agendized, and that's what it is. It's not, I don't believe, typical that the public hearing time on these things are used for board comment. They are designed for public hearing. They're posted that way and such. So I just want to put in that this is probably something around governance protocols that we need to be paying more attention to and have agreement about what's about. I don't want to make less of any of the conversation that I heard, but we have plenty of opportunity with this budget advisory committee coming up to talk about that under the budget there and so forth. And just want to remind us to be very careful about aligning what we're talking about with what we say we're going to talk about in the posted agenda.
Thank you. No other comments. We will close this item and we will move on to E2. 2025-2026 Local Control Accountability Plan. This is also a public hearing item. Mr. Vince.
Yes, good evening. Tonight we're holding our public hearing for Santa Barbara Unified's 25-26 Local Control Accountability Plan. So this includes the input that we had from staff, students, as well as families and community members. And if you look into the LCAP, they're designated specifically as educational partners. So it's all of those groups. And just as a reminder, we are focusing on the key students, which would be our low-income students, also known technically as our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. We have our special education students, which is also students with disabilities, also SWD, that's the same thing. We have our EML students, as well as our homeless students and our foster youth. And we are focusing specifically with our goals actions and funding on the three key areas, which is academic success, student wellness, and culture, inclusive culture and climate at the school. Tonight's hearing is an opportunity for the public to provide additional feedback before the plan is brought forward for adoption at our June 24th meeting. This public hearing is required by law, and just like at the 24th meeting, the adoption is also required by law at that time. So we're open for public hearing.
Thank you. There are no public comments for this item. Anything from the board? I'm not seeing it. Okay.
I think it would
Ms.
just be
Gaffney.
helpful because I appreciate Trustee Banning's focus on governance. I also, that is the main focus, and I am learning. So can you give us more clarification on, does the board ask questions during public hearing?
Typically, a public hearing item is to open up, and you've seen us do something similar for instructional materials and whatnot. It's a way of releasing the documents to the public before adoption so that it's in the agenda so they have access to it. I don't see any harm in asking questions for the items that are attached, but Mr. Banning's right. It is atypical for it to be a substantive discussion for the board. It's typically so that the documents are of public knowledge. Yeah, give me 1 second.
I guess, oh, sorry.
So I think I understand that. I mean, I looked it up quickly. Who knows if this is correct because it's an AI overview. So it says, yes, school members can make comments on agenda items during public hearings. And it says California law requires the public be given an opportunity to comment, so the public can definitely comment and ask questions. And it says we do need to stick to the agenda. We can try to answer some of those questions. We did have a member talk about the fact that when we bring things to the agenda, that we have a meeting where we show it, we have a meeting where we can discuss it, and then we have a meeting where we can vote on it. I know that we have this we've had this discussion, how many things can we talk about in a meeting? But I think, one of the things we'll have to talk about is what items should we give some time for that? Because what we're asking is that if we're going to vote on something, that it be presented in a way that we feel comfortable voting on it. We're still trying to figure out, as new board members, the two of us, and then just this new thing we're adopting, do we have enough information to feel comfortable voting on things? That's what the fiscal committee is about. So I think we're going to go through a little trial and error, talk about things a little too much, but I'd rather have a board that talks about things. I don't think what we're doing is up under board, because we're having this discussion publicly, so people are hearing what we're saying.
I appreciate that. Ms. Caffrey.
So similarly, I just did a quick search, and what I read is that we are allowed, and it's helpful to ask questions to help the public and the board better understand what's being presented. Especially key during LCAP or budget adoption hearings. How does this expenditure advance our equity goals? What portion of this is ongoing versus one-time funding? What metrics will we use to evaluate whether this investment is working? So I think, I think we just have a larger discussion on governance, which we keep on talking about, because like the fact that I have to chat GPT, this shows I'm ignorant. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'll just go back to my to my comments. It wasn't my intent to say we can't ask questions. It's my intent to say we need to be carefully aligned with the types of questions that we're asking. We kind of drifted far afield to music and Prop 98 expenses, and I understand it's all budgetary, but I believe that those conversations are probably better held within specific items about them. That's all. I'm not trying to say don't have questions, don't have comments, but A public hearing is primarily to bring something forward to the public from transparency and public participation and accountability for these things. And I understand how questions can help. But I do think that as we grow and learn as a board, that we'll get better clarity about that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. With that, I will close E2 and escape this public hearing abyss that we're in, and move on to F1, the development of process to validate board priorities. And give me a second. So one thing that you'll notice some attachments. One is a spectrum of community engagement to ownership, which we went over with Valerie during our board study session. I asked Dr. Maldonado to come up with a starting off point. This is not the end all be all. This is not the only option. It's just a way for us to set a container for a conversation and to get feedback. And if you look into your green folders, it has the items, the attachments, both the proposal that Dr. Maldonado came up with, including the spectrum of community engagement to ownership, all of which are attachments, and the proposed Survey Monkey that Dr. Maldonado put together. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Maldonado just to share what she has provided us.
Thank you. Again, following from our board study session, board members, I know that we very often say we've heard from the community, or the community says this, or we want to hear from the community. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to validate the priorities that you all came up with after a day-long discussion, where you were also including some of the like the Reading Coalition, SBTA. I see Ms. Post here, who also participated. You had a chance to look at 40 slides of data, of outcomes, that shows the work that we've been doing around literacy and math, enrollment, the types of schools, our A through G, college and career readiness, LPAC outcomes, and so on. And so, because we want to make sure that we think about all the communities that we serve in Santa Barbara Unified, one of the tools that we looked at was this spectrum of community engagement to ownership, and how we take the validation of the priority that the board has. And I feel like you were interested in doing something like this. This is just a tool for you to use as a framework to think about how to engage and how far do we want to take the validation process or the board priorities. And after that, what will that look like in terms of what you discussed around the equitable results outcome flow, which was really about setting the performance metrics that you want to use, how you want to measure progress, and at what stages of this process you want to do the different steps. I prepared sample communication that you may want to use, the sample board priority survey. I included in there the data slides, which I think are a lot for anyone to take, but I also didn't want to not include the data that you use to make decisions. I also provided a potential process of next steps that you could take or we could take, including a bit of a flow of the results count process, which starts with engaging community, analyzing and developing the initiatives that align with our priorities, setting goals, analyzing budget priorities, which is all that we've just talked about here, setting goals and performance metrics, and then reviewing annually how are we doing towards those metrics. So this is just all a starting point for the board to discuss. Is this an engagement framework? I do want to make sure that you know the first 7 pages are really about some reflective questions, the way that the spectrum works. Page 8 is really the way that you would be using this tool if we decided to go with it, which is really looking at using the spectrum as a tool for planning and goal setting. Pages 9 and pages 12 really look at other ways of applying the spectrum. And page 9 through 11, it's looking at applying the spectrum to policy development. And then the rest of the pages after 12 is applying the spectrum to community campaign development. So this particular framework has 3 ways that you can use it. I think for the purpose of validating the board's priorities, we would probably only look at using the tool on page 8 related to this spectrum. And again, the board would need to give us direction on how and when you want to do it. I also included a bit of a plan for the board validation, which would include what will the different roles, what tasks they'll take on, and when. So you notice I listed board members, superintendent, cabinet, principals, our labor partners, SBTA and CSEA, managers, district office, community groups that we want to outreach with. How far do we want to go into these different groups of people? And lastly, I do want to say that I met with both outgoing SBTA President Josby Galindo and incoming board SBTA President York Shingle, Ken Rivas, CSEA President, and Jared also joined us on Friday, so I could just give them an overview of these tools, get a little bit of feedback from them. I originally had different questions. If you're looking at this front page for the board, is it considered a step 1, step 2? But I thought that for the board discussion, as you look at these tools, that based on their feedback and listening to them, really it's a question for the board. You may want to use these tools as a guiding starting step for your discussion.
And I'll add, really what I'm hoping that the board, that we, as a board, that we can settle on some really concrete direction to Dr. Maldonado and staff, so that when they go and do this validation process, we're getting back not only the information, we're reaching the people that we want to reach, and we're using a process that meets our expectations. And we're 5 individuals with 5 can be different expectations. I'm hoping that we can settle on one so that it makes the direction really simple for Dr. Maldonado about what she needs to accomplish, and we don't get on the back end of this with a conversation about why it didn't meet our expectations. Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I think that it's a good starting place for us and for us to discuss in terms of considering it as a framework, and that it's, described, and the way of what we've talked about in terms of the community wanting to be involved in determining the priorities of the district and involved in decisions with that. I think it's a good place to start for the board. That's my own opinion.
Thank you. Questions, feedback? Dr. Beal?
Yes, I do think this is a good starting point. I guess I have some very specific questions. In looking at the people we would outreach to, the list that you have here, I like this group. I am curious about the community groups. Like, are they the people we interact with on a regular basis? Like, a little more detail on the community groups, people we have MOUs with. And then a group that I don't know if this is a question that other board members might have. Are we outreaching to our parent-family community with these board validation goals? Or, they're not technically in these groups. So is that something we want to include? That's a question.
I was going to just say, you can give some color to what you meant with community groups, but I think if we want to give that direction, we can absolutely give that direction to Dr. Maldonado.
So, should we talk about that?
Yeah.
Do we want to include
Yeah.
parents, families, just, they don't have to be in a group, they don't have to be employed by the district, but they're just out there, they may have children in the district, they may not.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Maldonado?
So I want to point out that the first part of the spectrum of community engagement starts with acknowledging marginalization. There's going to be some groups we can quickly access with SurveyMonkey, and then there's some that are not. So as you think about this framework, the big idea is, how do we get a wide spectrum of outreach and And maybe other people go on our behalf to people that we couldn't normally reach in our normal everyday channels that we, in the 21st century, think of just send a survey, and get it back, and those are the results. But rather having a different approach. So yes, the idea with community, I don't have a particular group in mind per se, but I know there's Promotoras, there's Future Leaders of America, there's other organizations that have networks of people, and I would want the board to then give me some direction. We could do our typical, principals send out a survey and we think we got all the families. So that's really the idea of how this framework goes beyond what we would typically think of ourselves. It's really all of us behaving differently, including me starting with, hey, SBTA, CSCA, come on, let's talk about this.
And I think I want to uplift the point that you're making, because when we did the Community Formation Commission work, one of the big tasks was community outreach to get some validation on like the recommendation that we had. And what we found is some groups are really hard to reach and really skeptical about interacting with any sort of government agency. So going to folks like Future Leaders of America or these organizations that already have rapport with these families or these groups is extremely important. So I think really leaning on community partners, and maybe they might not even be community partners right now. They might be new partners that we're going to have to start relationships with. Dr. Beal?
So basically, we are indirectly, through these groups, we're getting those groups to have their communities talk to them, and they represent them. I think that's a very good way of doing this. I like that idea a lot. President Escobedo and I were at a community meeting with Santa Barbara Reading Coalition, and they made actually an excellent suggestion as we send material out, as we speak to community partners. You talked about having the slides there, and those are great, but that data can be very difficult to digest. So they recommended having some data that explaining the data that we see. Why would we place literacy? Because they made an interesting comment, which is one of the members said, well, about 50% of children don't have reading difficulties. So if we have 50% of our students learning how to read easily, that doesn't necessarily reflect the curriculum. It's just 50% will do it well no matter what you do. So kind of educating the 50% isn't an okay number. So trying to not overload people with information, but underlining why we would, as a board and as a group of people, choose these priorities. So give a little bit more background, give a little bit of data, so that when they validate it, they understand what we were thinking. So as best as we can. That's going to be a little bit of work because there's a lot of thinking behind it, but they suggested having a little bit more explanatory information before they complete a survey, or if they're presenting it to the community, that data can go out there in a digestible way.
Ms. Caffrey?
So I guess my question is, to me it seems like a huge effort to put this together, and I think it's worthwhile and super important. At the same time, when I look at other boards who are doing this, they are doing it in conjunction with governance work. And so basically, like San Francisco Unified did it recently, so did Long Beach. And I'm wondering, can we do it together? Because it seems like there's a certain order of doing things, and I don't want to do it. Frankly, so if you pull up Long Beach Unified Student Outcome Focused Governance Implementation Journey, it took them a long time. And it shows the multiple steps that it took to change how they govern, and the goal adoption was part of that, because as Trustee Banning has talked about goal proliferation and wanting to have all the goals be the same for the board, the superintendent, the LCAP. So what I'm wondering is, since we're also going to be talking about governance this summer, do we, as we potentially work with outside
experts on governance, should we be talking about goal validation at the same time, as opposed to starting goal validation now when this seems like a key part of student outcome focused governance practices? I'm not saying we adopt that one, but how you govern and the goals you adopt are so closely linked. I'm wondering, does it make sense to do both processes together?
Does anyone have feedback? Dr. Beal.
Is your question specifically that this summer, while we're validating our goals, at the same time our board is validating the goals for ourselves, or trying to focus our actions on our goals? Is that your question?
No, basically my question is, like, if you look at San Francisco Unified, you recently did this, and basically what they did is they adopted a student outcome focused governance framework, and they also adopted goals for the district at the same time. And so it was part of the same process. So it wasn't done separately from their from adopting their governance framework, because basically the whole point of student outcome focused governance is you spend 50% of your time at every board meeting monitoring your goals. And so there are like very specific steps of doing things like validation. It just seems like validation is a huge project. So I'm wondering if there are very systematic ways of doing it that are associated with specific governance frameworks. Does it make more sense to do those together as opposed to two separate processes? And Long Beach is another example. And Long Beach is considered like one of the best districts in the country.
I'm wondering if what we're talking about with what we're trying to validate now, which were priorities that we developed at a workshop. We didn't develop any specific goals, and I'm wondering if the differences between getting a sense on our priorities as opposed to the creation of goals is something that we should be thinking about. Perhaps this is an opportunity to, if you look at it as a test, can we figure out how to make this work with something that's broader than very specific goals, which would ultimately need to be something we'll do too.
Well, and that's a good point. I think for me, for me, the thought process and the intention was we set priorities. There was a philosophical discussion about, do we go out to the community and have the community set the priorities, or do we as a board set the priorities? And we landed on setting the priorities, going out and validating them. When we get the feedback, then we revisit our priorities and we say, okay, are these the right priorities? Did we land in the right place? We're taking that as one consideration amongst many, and we land on our priorities. My thought would be that the next step is that we are then defining from those priorities, what are the metrics that we are actually trying to achieve? And in somewhat, like my ideal process, this would end in something of a strategic plan. And to what Mr. Banning has spoken about many times, and I think you highlighted, Ms. Caffrey, is aligning the goals of the district with these priorities areas, with the LCAP, and making sure that everything is going in the same direction. The question about governance and putting it together with this, I'm still at a loss, like conceptually, about what that looks like. Excuse me. So I don't know that I do agree that it's an undertaking what we are about to do, but we're talking about a plan and decisions that will guide the district for 3 to 5 years, at least, maybe beyond, and decisions that we are going to use to make some really tough choices. Do these decisions that come before the board align with the priorities that we set? I think we can do both things on parallel tracks. We are planning on having discussions about governance this summer. I don't know that we need to wait on the validation piece, but we could do them together. And when we do the governance discussion and make that decision, I think that's a good time for us to also bring this into that discussion as well, so it's not lost. Ms. Munoz?
Yes, I agree. I think that, in terms of the priorities that we came up with during the retreat with our community partners' involvement, and then having more of a inclusionary process and gathering input, from our community, so that they will be, will have ownership with it, as you and Mr. Banning have mentioned, would be certainly the direction I would want to take. And then as a separate discussion, as Ms. Caffrey mentioned, we can discuss the board governance. Not to stop, not to halt the process of one versus another, but to have both of them occur. But I think, I'd like to see us focus on the community engagement in terms of our priorities.
Any other? Ms. Caffrey?
So I guess one question is, would we, if the district is going to be doing the community engagement, will they put together a plan of who they're going to outreach to, or how does that exactly work?
So what I'm asking from the board today is that we give some really concrete guidance and direction about any groups that we would like to be included in this outreach. And we can certainly have Dr. Maldonado follow up with us with a comprehensive list of who they have in mind, because we're not going to think of every group right up here on the dais. But if there's a particular group that you want included, please provide that direction. I would like to know specifically what successful validation sounds like to you, or looks like to you, and timeline as well. So that Dr. Maldonado from this meeting can then start working on that with her staff and start, if this survey isn't what we want as part of the validation process, start designing a survey that does. So where possible, please be specific. Ms. Caffrey?
I'm wondering if, if we do a survey, if we also have an open-ended question that is just, do you have any thoughts or different priorities, or, instead of just having people respond to our priorities, also have one open-ended. Any other comments?
I like that idea. Does anyone else have any feedback?
I actually thought and forgot to mention it, so I appreciate that you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you got that, Dr. Maldonado? Okay. Let's continue focusing on the survey. So maybe we can get that out of the way. Are there any other points of feedback about the survey itself? I heard one from Dr. Beal, some supporting information that gives a little bit more context for each of the goals.
I heard it a little differently. I'm trying to clarify because I was already texting Ed. I agree with you that the 40 slides of information are a lot, and it's a real Goldilocks approach. How much is too much? How much is too little? Because you did look at a lot of data to decide, and really for the public viewing, we could take and make a a shorter slide deck of information. If you think data should accompany the slide deck, the survey, or is there a narrative that you would prefer that we add to sort of set the stage for how you came up with the priorities?
So I see a a couple pages of data, which includes hyperlinks to our data. So data on data. And then we have the Survey Monkey. So my thought would be that that the Survey Monkey have enough information that we say we don't just list what we, like right now it's 4 bullet points, right? And that might be a little too little, but we could, now I haven't used Survey Monkey in a while, can we have hyperlinks to more information so that we try to have a bullet that basically says, this is the issue I've identified. We would like it to be better, or if we want to put a numeric or whatever, we've stated we would like to see people to be reading proficient by 3rd grade and all that other stuff. So the things we've actually already said. And then if you want more information and look at the data behind this, then the people who are really interested in data can look at it. But I think just doing the survey with just these 4 bullet points doesn't give enough information, especially the 3rd and the 4th. Well, the 4th seems pretty simple, but align instruction, assessment, that sounds like we talk about the words eduspeak. That is very eduspeak. And so just put it in, that people understand what we're trying to say with those words. Yeah.
So I agree with you, and I see that Mr. Zucchelli is saying that we can add, so I agree that we can shorten the data that you use for the literacy and math because there are areas of need. I mean, there's no question that we need to improve literacy and math across the system, and we can shorten that. For the alignment of instruction, assessment, and achievement, I would love to get your words for our EduSpeak. I think when I look at and when I talk to the SPTA and CSA, they pretty much get it. I know Mr. Rivas talked about like what happens in the classroom needs to have something change. That was like his non-EduSpeak language, but I would love just like a few words that for you resonate, how to explain that.
I do think we need to highlight that I mean, does everybody understand that literacy and math are an issue? I do think we need to make some more strong statements about that. That we could say we're not, I don't know, we can talk about the words. I don't want to have a big discussion about that. But we do need to show that there is a reason we picked those parameters.
Ms. Caffrey and then Ms. Munoz.
I wonder a little bit about just survey design and like if you look at how districts write surveys to get this information without specifically saying is literacy your top priority, because I think people may not choose that, because they may not realize it's an issue. But if you say, and I think there's literature on this, but like, what do you want your student to graduate with? What do they need to be prepared with in order to be successful in life? And then I think people will say they need to read well, they need to be able to do math. You see what I mean? So I think there's something to be said about survey design and reading a little bit more about that and how you get to what people really care about for their students without specifically saying like, because I'm sure people also say, I want my child to feel warm and welcome at school. So that is, that connects to connection and belonging. So you see how like the way we ask questions may get more information from them, and then we slot that into priorities. So do you see what I mean?
I do see what you mean. I think I would define that a little bit differently, but maybe I'm misinterpreting. That type of design would be helpful if we were going out to the community to set the priorities. But since we already set the priorities, we're trying to solicit feedback on those particular priority areas rather than asking folks to develop a whole new set of priorities. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I still think it might be useful information to get, because like when you're validating priorities, I wonder, and I'm not a survey designer and I would love to just read more about this, but like validating priorities basically I would say means, do they align with what we have come up with? And I think that's why I wonder about the actual design of the survey, and like maybe what we list are desired student outcomes, like
does it matter if your child reads well, does math well, you know what I mean, and puts them within options. And then other, like, what are the things that are really, I'm just wondering, like, as a member of the public,
Yeah.
Not looking at 40 pages of data to understand where our district is, but what is it we aspire for our children, and how does that then map onto priorities for our district?
You bring up a good point about survey design. I wonder if, rather than trying to design the survey tonight, maybe the direction to Dr. Maldonado is to reach out to someone from UCSB, because, I mean, in research, survey design is like the entire, like, science. And so maybe that's our direction to you, Dr. Maldonado, is to work with someone who has research design or survey design experience, to get solicit feedback about how we should design this particular survey, and then circling back with the board to get feedback.
And basically, just because I feel like also if we hold listening sessions, it's a similar thing. Just how we ask questions matters to what kind of responses we get.
Correct. How do you, is there any, yeah. Ms. Munoz?
And get a flag. I'm just kidding. I liked your comment, Ms. Caffrey, about like the child feeling, warm and safe. I think that when I was reading this, I thought about like the literacy level and the terms, because I forget what they say. Like, you have like 1 minute to get people's attention and have them complete it, right? So I was thinking of a comparison when I translated things and reviewed things for my day job for SenCal Health, is that we made it at the 3rd grade reading level, because people want to look at it, they want to do it, and that's it. And if they don't get it, they're just going to, maybe skip a lot of it or not complete it. So I was thinking of board priority, like, for example, board priority 2, math, students meeting math standards at grade level, and where it says 6, do you agree, instead of like with this priority, do you agree this is important? Yes or no? Something to make it like, so maybe if, you don't know what priority is or whatnot, well, priority to who, right? Do you have any comments on this priority? Fine. The one that Ms. Caffrey helped me come up with, because I was reading it and I was struggling with belonging in community. That was good with that. Foster a welcoming school climate, the rest of that. And I thought, well, they're going to say, well, I don't have a foster child or whatnot. So I was thinking, child to feel, well, I just came up with the part, like, child to feel welcome and safe at their school. As an idea, just as an idea. I'm obviously not, a survey person, but just in terms of like the one, literacy, students reading and writing, and then, is this important? Do you agree it's important? Whatnot. And stuff. And certainly I think that's a great suggestion that President Escobedo made in terms of the, UCSB and so forth. The number 3, that one I think is very difficult for someone, may be very difficult for someone to understand, instructional practices to standard-based. When I first came on the board, that language was very hard to figure out, honestly, right? So something that, maybe coming up with something on there, I don't know. Just as an idea.
Let me check in with Mr. Banning. Mr. Banning?
Yeah. I have a couple of thoughts. I agree with trying to simplify the language. I'm again struggling with the difference between a validation and a reconsideration. The answers are yes, no in these, and I'm imagining that, what are you going to get? The comparison of these 4 priorities with how many yeses and how many nos are on it. I don't know what that tells us. I can't imagine that any of these priorities in in language that is simple for everybody to understand would be somebody saying, no, this shouldn't be a priority. So I share the questions about survey design and the purpose of it, but I understood the purpose of this to be validating what we have already said. The things that I worry about is what type of things that aren't on here that people will say, well, why isn't that there? And so we addressed that by saying, what are the others? I also wonder if there's any interest in getting an idea of how these things rank in aggregate in terms of importance. And that might look like something that instead of a yes and a no, a choice of this would be among my highest priorities. And yes, I agree with this priority, or this is not important to me. Something like those that would end up with an aggregate that would say, well, of these four things, I'd love to see, yeah, you got it right. These are all priorities that everybody agreed to, and these are the ones that seem to be most important.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Ms. Caffrey.
So I think Trustee Escobedo's idea of getting someone from UCSB to help us with this is a really strong one. And I guess it gets to the center of the question that Trustee Banning is bringing up about validating, because on one hand, we do want to see, were we correct? But the point is, were we correct? That also leaves opening for, are there other patterns or important issues that are really coming to the surface many times that were not on our radar? So that to me is validation. It's not just these four. Validation is like, did we get a good sense of what actually is most important? But I that's where I feel like your idea of bringing in a researcher who knows how to do this would be super helpful, because I am no expert here. Yeah.
Agreed. Yep. Dr. Maldonado.
I do want to remind the board, we just went through a whole LCAP process that also came up with some of the same priorities. And then we, in January, did a not perfect survey, not research validated survey, but in that survey, we did have some ranking that took place, and we do have those results as well to add to some of the work we've already done. And if we go to the spectrum of outreach, is the point really, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the board's thinking, is the point to get a perfect survey which will get us maybe stuck in this consult stage and not really move us to, in the spectrum of engaging community, getting people to really start talking about what is reading, what does it look like, what do we want kids to do, how do we work with foundations who are raising money, how do we make sure that the right metrics are out there, how do we get teachers to understand what those metrics will mean for their teaching every day. And so I just kind of want to get us a little unstuck in getting too academic ourselves, be included in the survey design, and not maybe move some of this in terms of the process. So I just want to offer that for your thoughts, so that we kind of, as we think about I'm hearing a little bit of what you're saying, which is simplify the language, simplify the data to give accessibility to the public, internal people and external people in our district, and understanding the board has come up with these four priorities. We think these are the important areas for us to improve on. We want to tell you how we came up with them, engage other communities, teach them how to engage them on our behalf, gather that data, bring it back to you, and really spend more of our time in the other pieces, which is where we're actually working with people to come up with their solutions, come up with our metrics, and so on. So I just want to offer that for consideration.
So I want to add one comment, and then I'll go to my colleagues. Is I hear that, and it is totally possible for us to get stuck on like this. I think the reason why I think it's helpful to go and ask someone who specializes in survey development is because I think we're all struggling a little bit with how to validate. Like it's not a typical survey that we do all the time. And so we need someone to answer the question, like, how do we get the feedback that will validate these 4 priorities that we developed. And I don't know that we have much experience or expertise in that, Dr. Beal.
I think that is correct. We want to make this an effective survey. That's the biggest. This is a huge decision I feel like we're making. Do we think that some of our community partners we could send out a draft and just get a little bit of reaction from our community partners about what they think of the survey after we at least come up with some sort of prototype?
Now I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I think that is how we could possibly get stuck. I think getting an expert's opinion would make a lot of sense. To get community feedback on the survey itself is kind of where I think we could potentially get. Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I like Dr. Maldonado's idea about not getting stuck in the survey and, spending the rest of the night here and on this and whatnot. I was thinking in terms of I guess you'd call it an open-ended question, I'm not sure, but things like, do you have any ideas how we can help you? Seeing what people say. Are you interested in joining us in this effort? If so, how? Kind of thing. Just throwing things out there.
All right, I'm going to try and move us along. So, for the survey, I'm going to make the suggestion. I'm going to ask if my fellow colleagues support it, that our direction for the survey is for Dr. Maldonado to reach out to someone who has survey development experience or research experience that can assist in the validation process and make sure that we're getting the information that we're looking for. Dr. Beal?
I concur.
Ms. Caffrey?
I think that sounds great. And then maybe the list of, how we do listening sessions and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that for the next one. Ms. Munoz?
I concur also.
Mr. Banning?
Yep, I'm good.
Good. Good there.
So with that said, timeline of how this is all going to now occur, because now I'm including somebody else. Sunita's saying tomorrow she wants me to get this done by, and I want to meet her expectations. But as far as the end of the school year is upon us, and I want to make sure that I meet your expectations, this is probably then going to just become some of the work we're doing this summer.
I think so, and I think what I'm going to request is that for you, Dr. Maldonado, because we're still unsure of how long this is going to take. You're right. We just gave you direction to add a third party into this, and so that adds time. My request to you is that you let the board know what realistic expectations are based on the resources that you have, based on the time, and if there are additional needs for resources, that you bring those to the board. And then we're going to be faced with a decision on whether or not we either change our expectations or we provide what's needed to get this done. Is that okay? Okay. So the next piece that I wanted to throw out there is I would like to also suggest that there is some sort of focus group portion of this, that it can't be so unwieldy that we have dozens and dozens of focus groups, but that we do have select focus groups to solicit feedback from strategic partners. Our union partners is a great place to start, but there are also probably some really strategic community partners that we have. And site leadership would be a really valuable focus group. But that we have those focus groups, and my preference would be that it would be facilitated by a third party, that it's not our staff. I mean, we ask a lot of our staff already as it is, and so to put this on their plate as well as everything else that we're asking them to do, I think it would be better for us to have a third party. It could look a lot of different ways. It also could mean that we have to put some resources behind this. But the way I see it is this is an investment. These are decisions that will guide our district for the next 3 to 5 years. But but that's what I'm putting out on the table, and I'm hoping for feedback from my colleagues. Dr. Beal?
I do think we should have focus groups, and I absolutely think we should use our third-party facilitators. I think that is a way of bringing them into the conversation and getting them involved in this goal setting that we're doing.
When you say third-party facilitators, do you have anyone in
Well,
mind?
I know that the Santa Barbara Education Foundation is interested. The Santa Barbara Reading Coalition is interested. There may be other groups that speak to particular communities. I think as we get this community list, maybe we can identify some groups that do outreach already that really have a ready network.
I think yes to a ready network and partnering with them to access people. I think facilitation is a particular skill that we'll want to find someone who specializes in pulling out this sort of information. I'm thinking not necessarily Valerie, but someone that has that ability to moderate a conversation, especially when there are different perspectives, points of view, and we're looking for very specific pieces of information. Dr. Maldonado.
What I hear is a little bit of what we did with the racial climate assessment work. So when we were doing all of that work a couple of years ago, we actually, I think we put out an RFP for an organization that actually goes out and does this kind of work, whose expertise is in that area of how to convene groups, what kinds of questions to ask, how to put the data that they find together in a report for the board. And you all had a chance to give feedback and go back and get more information and so on. So now I'm hearing a slightly different take than going to UCSB for a survey, but rather engaging in a group that will come and do this whole process for us, and they could design both the survey and the facilitated focus group. So I'm wondering if that's another where you were thinking.
I think it's a path. I think it's a
Okay.
path, but the board would have to agree to put resources behind this, because I think if we were going to go that route, I wouldn't want them to stop at just the validation piece. I would want them to also help with designing the metrics, getting feedback to design the metrics, and figure out what do we actually mean by literacy in elementary, junior high, and high school. And that's going to really demand, I think, even more involvement and feedback from community partners, union partners, site leadership, to talk about what does that mean in each of those spaces, and what are the goals that we want to set. Ms. Caffrey.
One thing I wonder is, I've heard from other districts that they talk to their community partners and foundations about funding this kind of thing, that it doesn't have to all come from our budget, because I feel like we are strapped. And I wonder, there are many, this is a much larger project, but if this is the direction we're going, I've heard of basically like multiple foundations coming together to support a district in a particular project like this. And so it's not one point of view that is that is funding the project. It's many people who are cross-section of the community who are funding this kind of project.
That's a great idea and a great point. Dr. Beal?
I just had a question. You said that you had an RFP. I don't know what that was for the climate's assessment.
That was years ago. That was
okay. I was just curious. Yeah.
That was the assessment that led to all of the combating anti-blackness work that we had done. It was the assessment on the front end, and then the work that followed was based on the information in that report. Ms. Munoz and then Ms. Caffrey.
Yeah, are you asking about community partners, or should I email that to Hilda? I have it written
You
up
can
already.
mention community partners, and then that's something that we can, yeah.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay. I have, what is it? Well, Future Leaders, Cause, Las Promotoras that you mentioned, Hilda, Gateway, and Healing Justice. And Casa de la Raza. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think I heard, at least in the validation process, we need some level of input from an expert on the survey, so we gave that direction to Dr. Maldonado. I'm hearing support for some sort of focus group portion of the validation process. Is that right? And maybe the direction to Dr. Maldonado could be understanding those two components. Maybe you can, and I'm more than happy to work with you on this, but we can figure out what the options are. One could be go for an RFP with a partner who's going to help us not only with the validation, but the next step after that of setting metrics and goals. But that's going to come with a cost, and maybe we can talk with the Ed Foundation or some other partner that might be willing to help in funding. And if we don't go with that option, what does it look like? And it probably looks like something where we moderate the focus groups and we partner with someone maybe from UCSB. If that makes sense. Three paths.
I feel like why don't I just take a stab at bringing some proposals?
I like that.
What all of you said tonight. Sorry.
Is your mic off?
Yes, sorry about that, Mr. Banning. I will take a stab at bringing a couple of proposals to the board on the 24th. And it'll give me a little time to talk to UCSB and see if there's even someone there. It may be a combination thereof, because I heard like 3 or 4 different paths, including going out for funding. So those are all 3 distinct pathways. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else that folks would like to share with Dr. Maldonado before we move on from this item?
I'm very encouraged by the way this conversation has gone, because it seems to be aligning with a broader idea of many of the things that we're talking about, getting from these priorities to something that looks more like a cohesive strategic plan that might bring alignment together to all kinds of goals. So I do think this is an appropriate start for something that might expand out to cover lots of things that we're talking about.
I appreciate that. Any other last minute comments? All right. Do you have everything you need for now? Okay. So we're going to close out this item. I am going to give us a 5-minute recess, stretch our legs. We will come back at 8:50. Welcome back, everyone. We just finished F1 and reports and just discussion agenda. I'm going to actually take us, instead of to F2, we're going to go to G1, which is the second reading and approval of resolution number 2024-25-32, establishing a board finance committee. And I am, Dr. Maldonado, did you want to take this one?
Well, what I can start with is thank you to Board Trustee Caffrey and Board Trustee Beal. We sort of did this a little bit more in an email approach, but I met with Craig Price, Steve Vance, and we took the notes from the last meeting and we basically added in green. I know it's probably going to look in green on your screen and not on your printout. The changes that were discussed, starting with this first one. Let's see, Sandra. Right there under the first page, and be it further resolved, we added that the student board representative would be an advisory position so that we can stick with the number 9 as we stated last time. And then next, we went to the next page. We did strike 3 community members and brought it down to 2 with preferred finance background, as was discussed. And then 2 school site leaders, one is a K-8 and one is a 9-12. And that was based on the conversation we had. We also, under the second to last be it resolved, we had originally conceived of this as something that would start as soon as July 2025, but I think upon conversation and thinking about all the things we still need to decide on, we changed this to upon committee selection, because tonight we really need to hear from the rest of the board what the committee selection process will look like. So that's why we struck that. And then this last page is all of the things that you as a board will need to decide on. And they're in no particular order. Really, these are just the different decisions. I don't think I need to read them to you one by one. You can go ahead and read them yourself. But at this point, we really just need you to land on these decisions so that we can hopefully approve this and get moving.
Sounds great.
Okay.
And is there any public comment on this item? No public comment on this item. So first, I just want to express my gratitude to Dr. Beal and Ms. Caffrey for putting in all the work to get this started, and for Dr. Maldonado for also taking in our feedback and adjusting the resolution. Let's try to do this as quickly as possible and also have substantive conversation. But I think what I'm going to do, these green pieces of that are on the third page are the portions that we have to make decisions on. Do we feel comfortable just jumping into these, or does anyone have comments before we start? Okay. So the committee will establish bylaws and adhere to the Brown Act rules. Does everyone feel okay with that? That was yes. The committee will, what's that? No. The committee will select a chairperson, a secretary, and a parliamentarian. Is everyone good with that? Sounds like it. Okay, so now we need to establish what is the selection process for the two community members. Do we want board members to nominate and the board selects and approves? Or do we want community members to apply and the board selects and approves? Understanding that the second one is a more involved process and takes a little bit more time and effort. Ms. Munoz?
I favor option 1 for the board members to nominate.
I also favor option 1.
My one question is, how many people can you nominate?
I would say there's 2 positions. I feel more comfortable with 1 per board member. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I would have a ton of nominations outside of
true.
the board members, so.
Yeah, I favor 1 each also. I mean, one to select 1 if we nominate someone.
We have. The question was, how many nominations can 1 board member make? My suggestion was 1, with the understanding that this first round we're going to be nominating 2 people, but the way that we should, in my opinion, stagger the terms, we would only ever have 1 nomination in front of us at a time. And so for 5 people, potentially 5 nominations seems adequate.
So I would just be curious, I know that they're not a voting member, but how would we nominate the student advisory person? I mean,
I think we're just talking about the community members with the preferred experience of finance background. So do we feel good about option 1, board members nominate and the board selects and approves with a maximum of 1 nomination per board member? Mr. Banning? All right. Thumbs up. Next is the super. Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice under option 2, I tried to capture the other part of the conversation was that in selecting the members, the board will consider expertise, experience, objective perspective, and representation that reflects the diversity of the community.
Yes.
So as you think about that selection, do you accept that language?
Yep, we accept that language. All right. Do we agree that Dr. Maldonado or the superintendent will select the 2 school site leaders? I feel okay with this.
the question, will school site leaders be able to speak with you if they have interest in the community, in this committee?
Yes, I would think that I would start with school site leaders that have probably a few more years of experience, not a brand new one, for example. and then ask for them to self-nominate and select one of each.
So I think everyone's good with that.
Yep.
SBTA and CSEA will select their representative. I feel good about that. Okay. The terms. So we need to figure out how we want to stagger terms, length of terms. Oh no, I skipped the board one. If the board approves this resolution, it will result in the concurrent appointment of 2 board members. The board will select the next 2 board members at the organizational meeting in December, beginning at the end of the first term. So essentially, we do a reorg in December every single year, where we take a look at all the committees and we take a look at all of the positions, and we do a vote on each of them. This is saying that this would be, those 2 board positions would be added to the December meeting for the reorg, and there's no term limits or anything for how long a board member can be on the finance committee. It's just we revisit it every December. Okay, that's good. Length of term for committee members, so essentially everyone other than a board member or the assistant superintendent. And 2 years was a suggestion, but open to other suggestions. Ms. Caffrey.
My one question is, can they be reappointed if they are interested in doing a good job? I mean,
I think that's another decision we
I guess
should make.
or is that part of the bylaws that the committee will establish?
No, I think we should establish that as a group.
I think given that the first year we may have some people that are only, if we're going to do this overlap thing where they all don't end there, we might at the end of a first year, have somebody continue for another 2 years, and we just start getting that overlap in place. So I think we should be able to reappoint them.
Okay. Any disagreement with that? 2-year terms, and we can reappoint folks. Frequency of meetings. So quarterly, monthly. I would not support weekly. Ms. Caffrey.
My one question is, I would support monthly, but I wonder as the meeting gets up and as the committee gets up and running, could they have more frequent meetings in the first couple of months if need be? Could the committee decide that? Because it will take some time to nominate people. For instance, it seems like we may not start till August, and I just want, like, maybe in August and September we have 2 meetings similar to the tech committee, how they had like a compressed schedule for a specific project.
Yeah, I would say within reason, making sure that we're always taking into consideration staff time and bandwidth. But yeah, I think so. But let's say for just the regularly scheduled meetings, are we thinking monthly? That's what I heard, right?
Should we consider monthly, but with some down times? I mean, with budget cycle being what it is.
Any suggestions for those downtimes?
I agree with that.
Mr. Benny, do you want to specify the downtimes you're looking at? Are you thinking like summer? Are you thinking?
Well, July and I don't know what things look like around December, January. Maybe the best approach is to do it monthly and then just have the board, the committee decide to forego scheduled on certain months. I don't know.
I will say that you're on to something with the July break and the December break being the 2 longest breaks. One is 3 weeks, one is 4 weeks. And then March, we do have spring break. And then in November, November, December is kind of an interesting time because we do a week in November, and then we come back for like 2 weeks, and then we're off for 3 weeks. So that November, December probably will look a little funny too.
So maybe one meeting in November/December. Or...
Yeah, something like that.
We can say monthly and then leave it up to the discretion of the committee.
Yeah, we can maybe say no more frequently than monthly.
Yeah,
or kind of leave it a little open-ended.
Except that if we initially want to get off the ground running, we might want more than monthly. So I say just monthly with discretion from the committee could decide.
Yeah,
If-
that's
and
fine.
then we can always change it. We may need
Yeah.
less in the future, but
Yeah.
That works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if it becomes an issue where they're scheduling daily meetings, then we can revisit it. The board will determine the communication and report structure from the committee to the board as a whole. Does that sound okay for everyone?
I think what this is getting at, sorry. I
Dr.
think the
Malma.
idea here was to get at what is the communication structures that the committee will decide on. So some meetings you're just going to discuss things, and there should be, because you have a secretary as part of the committee, they should send a note to the board. These items were discussed, or a decision needs to be made, or a recommendation. Just, this is what I'm getting at, is the frequency, the who, and how the board wants it. Do they want that to come in a report to the board when the board has a meeting, or just a memo to the board every time they meet?
Ms. Caffrey, do you have an opinion?
I think that it could be helpful just for the committee to also talk about this, about what kind of helpful reports that they could potentially provide. So we could have like the minutes sent to the board after every meeting, plus an annual report, and then the committee figures out, are there additional reports that might be helpful?
Maybe what we do is we ask the committee to present to the board
Yes.
options for what the reporting structure would look like.
And I would also say Mr. Tedeschi is part of this, and so
Yes.
he's going to have his own reports. So
Exactly.
I think that's going to probably
Yeah.
a variety of reports.
So in the development of all of this structure, coming back to the board with a proposal, and the full board can weigh in. Okay. The board will annually review the status of the committee. I think that's fine. Committee members may not send a substitute. I think that's fine. All done? Everyone approved? All right, so we're out of here. Not quite. Dr. Vecchio got excited. So with that, this is an action agenda item. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Sorry. I second it. That's a motion to approve resolution number 2024-25-32, establishing a board finance committee. We have a first and a second. We do have to do a roll call vote. So I'll do Mr. Banning,
Aye.
Ms. Caffrey,
Aye.
Dr. Beal,
Aye.
Ms. Munoz,
Aye.
and I am an aye. Passes unanimously. Good work, y'all. All right, so now we're going to go to G2, the approval of the master plan for emergent multilingual learners.
And as Dr. Martinez is coming up, I know board members, you have read the first reading. It was our messy draft copy of the EML master plan, because again, you wanted to have some rounds at reading it. I do want to thank Dr. Beal for some really great feedback and things that we didn't have in place that I think just made it a lot stronger. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Martinez. I did ask her to give us a little bit more of the essence of the master plan and things that we are doing, because all of this has to do with how we serve students and what kinds of ways we will, how we serve students and how we monitor their progress so that we know they're successful, which is the main mission of our school district. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, good evening, President Escobedo, Dr. Maldonado, and board members. I am going to share with you just kind of like a follow-up from our previous presentation. First of all, just reiterate our goals for the master plan. Talk a little bit about the language acquisition programs, just kind of like what is similar and what's different between the two. And spend just a little bit of time looking through that assessment and progress monitoring plan that we have within Chapter 3. And I think the visual will help in the appendix of this presentation deck. And there were several questions about Elevation and what that platform is. So we acknowledge that, there was a need to further explain that, and it's really just a data for progress monitoring platform, and it's also a tool and resource for teachers. And then share with you the framework that we will be using for the upcoming implementation plan. So with that, shared with you in the previous presentation these are our 4 main goals that drive the Master Plan for Emergent Multilingual Learners. Highlighting obviously our meta vision and operationalizing that sentiment and that work that was done prior to this Master Plan, and being obviously centered on our goals for emergent multilingual learners, transparency, accountability, and being very intentional. And I bring this slide with the 6 chapters just to highlight that the 2 language acquisition programs are more thoroughly described in chapter 2. And then a lot of the monitoring and progress monitoring for emergent multilingual learners and within their journey towards reclassification is better described in chapter 3. So those are the 2 chapters that are highlighted in this presentation. So just like any good teacher, we use Venn diagrams when we try to describe what's different and what's similar between 2 programs. And what you can see is the dual immersion program is clearly a biliteracy program, and where the monitoring of both languages is something that gets progressively done as the languages are at par later in the 4th and 5th grade. And there's also that social cultural competence component that is innate in those programs. Also, the teacher has to have a bilingual certification. So the teacher has to be certified to teach in that target language, and our program is Spanish. And as far as, the other program primarily is we focus on English acquisition and grade level access. And the goal is language acquisition and obviously performance in English. The teacher has a different authorization or certification, which is called the English Learner Authorization, which means that they have abilities and strategies to scaffold language, to be able to make English accessible throughout different stages of the language development. Both programs have to have a designated and integrated ELD instruction, and both programs have to scaffold and have that support system for language, whether it's English as an additional language or whether it's, in this case, Spanish as an additional language. This is the visual that you'll see in the appendix and it's more thoroughly described in chapter 3. There are a lot of activities that happen to monitor our English learners throughout their school year. I highlighted the trimester, kind of like the time frames to delineate some of these activities, which would include progress monitoring within the MTSS system, and also the STAR test, as you are familiar with that. We have something that is called the EML profiling system, which really tracks the journey of the reclassification or the journey towards reclassification. We get ready for our assessment, which is LPAC. So we engage students and ensure that they have an awareness of what that is as they get older from 3rd grade and up. Teachers have like a protocol to engage as to what is the LPAC, what are the different kinds of questions, where are your scores. They become very familiar with the design of the assessment and also what the numbers mean and what the scores mean and how close they are towards, meeting proficiency. And that is a very common practice in our secondary spaces, where we have our teachers are very targeted in ensuring that they have that conversation with students early on in the school year, and then as March comes in closer, just before the assessment. There are some test prep, and obviously then the assessment. And then at the very last column, you'll see that we obviously receive the scores from the dashboard that comes later, like in December. That's just to show the the summative results, and then we receive the results obviously towards May and June within that same school year for the following year. So those are just describing some activities and where we continuously monitor and engage students, communicate with families on the different report card periods or monitoring periods, and this plan just keeps students and families engaged and informed. In the Elevation database, primarily what it does, it is a place in where a lot of the assessments that are collected to determine whether a child is considered English proficient are monitored there for easy access. It is a way to streamline that reclassification process so that every school, every leader, every teacher has the ability to know what's the status of the child. And not only do they have the ability to understand the assessment itself, how the child performed in the different domains, but how did they perform in literacy, and then how close are they to reclassification. So it is primarily for that, for the data purpose of it, and then it also houses other elements for management of the program. This is a screenshot that may be a little cumbersome to understand, but you can draw your attention on the circle where it says school. Just know that a column was deleted just so that we maintain student confidentiality, and every row is one child. So we would have like the column of the teacher's roster, and that particular class is a Cleveland class. All of those kids are in second grade, and as you see, every column after that, it'll give you the overall LPAC score and so on. And then if you scroll even further, it'll give you like the reading scores, it'll give you the math scores. So all of the data that would lend the teacher to understand like the profile of the child and how close they are towards reclassification. The first, where you see the word views, they can filter data in very different ways. How many years a child has been in the States, it'll give them a filter. They want to know just the overall level of the LPAC, and they want to know the reading level. Then they filter that. Grades, they can filter. So there's just different ways in where they can see the child's performance. Additionally, there is the A through H profile system that is better explained on page 56 of the master plan. But it also gives them the tiles and where they can click on the particular profile and then get the list of kids that, for example, profile A would be all the kids that are ready to reclassify. So they can click on that and they would have a view of the kids that are ready, and so on the different descriptors of what these profiles mean. The other side to Elevation is it is a support, and it's also a resource database for teachers. So they can find ELD strategies, lessons by language acquisition. It also helps sites in a district target professional development, and because they understand the data of the child, they can find different activities in where they can enhance their curriculum or enhance their way of intervening so that they can target specific areas of need. This is just an example. For this year, we focused a lot on academic language development. So if you notice that where the blue arrow is, there are four modules, if you will. Our teachers in Santa Barbara Unified completed 3 of those this year, so we have about 95% completion. And that's just one way of using the platform. The other way would be like if I'm a teacher and I want to see what are some of the LPAC test types, what are some of the kinds of questions that the kids are going to be exposed to. Listen to a story. Oh, then I click there and I see all of these examples and where I can target that specific skill. Or talk about a scene. There's a lot of listening, and depending on the domain that's being assessed, there are just different task types that you can use to better reinforce the understanding of the child, and also for the teacher to understand how language is measured. There's a lot of on reading comprehension, writing. Just think of the 4 different domains. So there is a battery of just skills and ideas that teachers can just be utilized to enhance their instruction. And then this is the framework that we have used at Santa Barbara Unified since we have partnered with SWIFT and then are implementing our MTSS systems of support. And this framework is utilized for a lot of our implementation plans. So you can anticipate that the implementation plan for this master plan would have these 4 domains. How do we engage the administrative leadership and some of those actions that would require for our leaders as a whole to engage in? There's an integrated educational framework in which we would identify these actions in support of how do we link our initiatives. There's a piece of parent engagement and community, and then obviously our policy. And I know that there are certain areas that are highlighted. So those are the areas where we would first prioritize in our implementation plan, and then as we go into the year 2, year 3, and so on, then we would move to the different areas. This is really just a very high level, some of the goals that we anticipate for the first year of the master plan's implementation, and some of the goals for year 2 and year 3. As the implementation plan gets further developed and with the feedback of our administrators, we would then shape some of these goals, but these are just large overarching goals for the plan. Awareness, and there's that phase of awareness, what's in the plan, and making those connections with the practices that are already in place. Initial implementation on some of those, moving into continuing with that implementation and capacity building, and then how do we sustain and have that continuous improvement. So with that, I conclude this update and then welcome any questions.
Thank you. And we do have public comment for this item.
Yes, we do. The first one is a virtual, and we have Roseanne Crawford.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. Data-driven goals. Wow, that's refreshing. Versus goals, goals, goals. Wonderful. Let's do it. This board is responsible for setting policy. It is responsible to move. And that's very important that you set policy. However, is it responsible to move forward with this? You heard last week from the ELAC parents directly. They shared that there are very few people who attend, often unable to come to a quorum, and that there is a lot of disagreement. They were also clear in their concern that they need their children to have more English proficiency. This is clearly being driven by administration, and community input has been secondary. This program was approved back in 2000 in the middle of COVID under the previous board when there was very little input and oversight or participation. Between now and then, no board has been presented the results of any of the required STAR and LPAC testing for the students in this program. Is there a possibility of getting this paused as an action item until this board has this information? In addition, how do McKinley scores compare to Franklin Elementary, Adams, or even Adelante, which have similar percentages of ethnic learners? To me, one of the biggest flaws in their progressive chart, which is in 4th, 5th, and 6th grades, they remain in 50% English instruction. It is well documented that language acquisition is greatest in early years, with English limitations going into junior high and high schools. How can they even take the same classes? This is openly admitted tracking and, frankly, not being treated as equal and denied opportunities and choices. It's important to look at this data because early learning, particularly in language, is crucial that can affect these children's learning abilities their whole lives. I also have concern about the Elevation software that they want to introduce as of next year. Why isn't the district, which has a whole department dedicated to this, doing this in-house?
30 seconds.
This updated plan also talks of expansion in chapters 2, 4, 5. Expansion? This is one school, one program at McKinley. They don't have any data to support grounds for expansion. Thank you so much for your time. Good night.
The next speaker is Julius Albanese.
Eka leo, ekushe, eshe. My name is Julius Albanese. I was born in Nigeria and immigrated to the United States in 1993. I just greeted you in the Yoruba language. I said, good evening. Thank you for your work. Eshe means thank you. First, I want to honor the indigenous people who have been stewards of this beautiful place we call Santa Barbara for millennia. And this is a momentous occasion in the struggle for human rights. Dr. Martinez and her team, muchísimas gracias. Thank you for your work. This past year, I've had the privilege and honor, because my daughter goes to Monroe Elementary School, their TK program, to be on the MLAC committee, which is the Emergent Multilingual Learner Advisory Committee. And it's well attended, at least at Monroe. We have passionate parents who care about their children from all types of backgrounds, especially working class people. And they want their students to achieve English proficiency as soon as possible, because they understand it gets more difficult as their children get older. Dr. Martinez, my apologies, visited us back in March, provided us with input, with information about this master plan. We were able to give input, and we did have lots of questions, but we all understood the importance of the work that she was doing. I had some questions for her about this plan. It's my understanding it's the first plan of its kind in this district. That is huge, and if properly implemented and built upon, it can only benefit students of immigrant backgrounds such as myself. Whether those students, whether they're from Africa, China, Cuba, Ukraine, or Mexico, can benefit from this plan in ways that we cannot even imagine right now. If it's properly implemented, it will ensure that all students can reach their full potential and obtain an education. And that is a human right. So, Board, thank you for standing up for equality, education access, diversity, inclusion, justice, and humanity. Now, make it happen with resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your comments. I'm honored to hear them.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Back to the board for any questions. Mr. Banning, do you have any questions?
Nope, not at this time.
How about comments? Ms. Munoz?
I could not have said it better than Mr. Albanese. Thank you so much. I think it's an excellent emergent multilingual program plan, and I certainly approve of it.
Thank you. Dr. Beal?
I agree. There has been a lot of work put into this plan, and I appreciate the time that Dr. Maldonado and Dr. Martinez have spent with me to talk about some of my questions and to help or to give my own perspective on what the plan looks like. As I've said at previous meetings, you know, this is a work in progress, and what I understand is we'll be making adjustments, and we have talked about this as a district, that we learn as we go along. So if we do have things that don't work, we change. So this is a starting point. So I'm really happy to see how much structure has been placed behind this starting point. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, I've been looking a little bit at other districts, and we know that districts don't exactly match ours, but one of the things that I wanted to emphasize that we pay attention to, and this is the process, this is not the plan, which is that you know, we're going to have screeners in the fall, and with our EML students, that if this that they get screened, and if they have coexisting learning difficulties, that we have interventions specifically because they'll need more help, that we have students who are getting to the end of year 4 and they are really behind the track that looks like that they would be successful in reclassifying before year 6. So whether it be year 3 or year 4, if students are not getting close to reclassification following what we know will be successful, that we again have very intentional interventions for that group. And then you know, some of the people that are involved in the email programs, I think you already have that in the plan, that integration, that discussion with different schools with each other about what's working at their schools. So kind of that institutional knowledge being mixed with the knowledge that we got from Loyola Marymount, because there probably will be some good institutional knowledge. So these are things that we just pay attention to. So I know that you plan to do that, but that we keep those things in mind. Thank you. Oh, and then one more. EML reports. We would like at some point like to talk about, and we are going to talk about student outcomes. How often can we as a board hear about how our EML students are progressing so that we know that whether we need to adjust the plan or not?
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Banning?
I made my comments last time about the plan. I'm very much in favor of it, and appreciate the work that's gone into creating it.
Ms. Caffrey?
I also appreciate this work. I made my comments last time too, and I really appreciate all of our parents who serve on MLAC and DEMLAC, and I started on my school site council, so I mean it's important, and we really appreciate all of your time and effort and thought helping us with this report, and thank you very much, Dr. Martinez, for putting it all together in all of your work.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Thank you to the parents. Thank you to everyone who put in this effort. I am waiting to entertain a motion. Ms. Munoz?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the master plan for emergent multilingual learners.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second, and we will do a roll call vote. Mr. Banning?
Aye.
Ms. Caffrey?
Aye.
Dr. Beal?
Aye.
Ms. Munoz?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that takes us to G3, approval of resolution 2024-25-33, approving the leaseback contract documents and authorizing execution and delivery of the site and facilities leases relating to the San Marcos Kiln Room project. Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Maldonado, President Escobedo, board members, cabinet members. Today I'm here to present hopefully two resolutions. The first one is the contract, and once approved, then there will be a second one to present the guaranteed maximum price. So this project is about the kiln room in San Marcos High School. The space for that project would be their old auto shop. Is this working? There you go. Okay, so the mechanism for the contract is the LLB, which is leaseback contract. The district will lease site to the contractor subleases, and we make progress payments, etc. This is one of those contracts that I've brought several times to the board. The pre-construction phase is actually completed. This project schedule and everything is ready, including the guaranteed maximum price. The board approval for this resolution will also predict the next resolution and the approval of that. So they depend on each other. The contractor is the Scott & Sons Electric. Very good contractor. We worked on many projects with them. They were approved on May 27th. And the selection was conducted in accordance with the California Ed Code 17406. So the San Marcos wants to repurpose the auto shop. Just to let you know, it's a large space. The electrical there is insufficient, and they need to use 16 pottery wheels with 2 kilns, so we need to add electrical. These are the limitations, current limitations, what they need for equipment. For safety and functionality, we need to upgrade the electrical. There you go. So, and with that, I would ask for the approval of Resolution 33.
Thank you. There's no public comment for this item. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the kiln. Look at the number. The resolution number 2024-25-23, approving the leaseback contract for the site and facilities for the San Marcos Kiln project.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, we have a first and a second. We're going to do a roll call vote. Ms. Munoz is out of the room, but that's okay. Mr. Banning?
Aye.
Ms. Caffrey?
Aye.
Dr. Beal?
Aye.
Ms. Munoz is absent. I'm an aye. So that's 4 yeses, 1 abstention. And
She's almost.
she can? All right. She'll vote when she gets back. So, well, we can, yeah, it passes because we need it for the next item.
Okay, so if I may move on to the next resolution?
Yes, we're going to go to G4.
So the next resolution is for the guaranteed maximum price, resolution number 2024-25-34. So with the approval of the previous resolution for the LLB contract, we have the guaranteed maximum price standing at $127,000 for the expansion of the electrical capacity at the previous auto shop at San Marcos High School to convert it to the arts room with kilns. And with that, if there are any questions, I would love to answer. Otherwise, I would ask for approval of this resolution as well.
Thank you. There's no public comment for this item. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? I'm not seeing any. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve Resolution 2024-25-34, approving the guaranteed maximum price contractor Scott & Sons Electric to proceed with the construction and adopting of the plans and specifications for the San Marcos High School Kiln Room project.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We got a first and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Banning?
Aye.
Ms. Caffrey?
Aye.
Dr. Beal?
Aye.
Ms. Munoz? Absent. And I'm an aye. 4 yeses, 1 abstention.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our action agenda, but we're going to go back to reports because we love reports. And we're going to go to F2, first reading and discussion of board policies and administrative regulations in Series 3000 and 7000, Facilities and Modernization. It's so fun. Who's up? Oh, right. Come on down.
All right, good evening again. So the purpose of this item is to, for the first reading, an opportunity for the board to discuss the updates and select for the board policies and administrative regulations. The California School Board Association, CSBA, they regularly issue policy updates to reflect the new state and federal laws, changes in education code, and relevant legal rulings. Today, we're presenting the first reading for the Board Policy 7214 for general obligation bonds, Administrative Regulation 7214 also for general obligation bonds, and AR 3517 for facilities inspection, as well as Exhibit 3517 for the checklist for facilities inspection. This is for review and discussion, and once approved or revised, it will be presented again for final approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that moves us to F3, first reading and discussion of board policies and administrative regulations in Series 0. Philosophy, goals, objectives, and comprehensive plans, operations, and accountability. Welcome, Mr. Vance.
Yes, good evening. It is the first reading and discussion for the 0,000 series, right? We just bring this to you again, and these are changes in federal and state laws that we're presenting to you during this first reading. I just want to bring one particular thing to your attention that you won't see in these others, which is we're actually recommending the deletion of one of our board policies, which is the COVID mitigation, and no longer applicable. So I could just say, thank goodness. And that is my report.
Thank you. No public comment for this item. Any questions or comments? Not seeing anyone. That concludes this item. We are now going to go to F4, first reading and discussion of board policies and administrative regulations for Series 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000 student and family services. Miss Edison.
I love the approach. Good late evening. What they just said, we are bringing these for first readings. As you know, the 5,000s deals with students and families. And so we just adopt what CSBA has. There's minor tweaks, make adjustments to our ARs, which that's our practices, how our people put it in place. And so I'm offering it to you for a first reading.
Thank you. No public comment for this item. Any questions? Any comments? Not seeing any. Thank you. And that takes us to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to pull from the consent agenda? Not seeing anyone. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
I have a first and a second. We're going to do roll call vote. We're going to mix it up. Ms. Munoz?
Yes.
Ms. Caffrey?
Aye.
Dr. Beal?
Aye.
Mr. Banning?
Aye.
Dr. Maldonado? I'm aye. Unanimous. And that concludes our items for today's meeting. You can take a look at coming events. We have the VIP calendar, so please sign up for graduations and promotions. Our next regular meeting is on June 24th, 2025. Everyone have a great night.